Look, I'm sure it's delicious. I just don't understand why we can't see Yoda now.
Patience! For the Jedi, it is time to eat as well. Eat! Eat! Ah! Good food. Good.
How far away is Yoda? Will it take us long to get there?
Not far. Yoda, not far. Patience. Soon you will be with him. Quickly. I hope. Why wish you become Jedi?
Mostly because of my father, I guess.
Father? Powerful Jedi was he. Powerful Jedi.
Oh, come on. How could you know my father? You don't even know who I am. No, I don't even know what I'm doing here. We're wasting our time.
I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience.
He will learn patience.
Much anger in him. Like his father.
Was I any different when you taught me?
He is not ready.
Yoda.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 88 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca and always joined by fellow Jedis Chris Byrne, Dave Bond and special guest Charlie Brigden. How are we?
Striking back, thank you very much.
Good evening, folks.
Very good we are.
I see what you did
Good
there.
we are, yes.
That's clever, we like that. I was going to try and do the introduction in a Yoda kind of way, but I thought, nah, Charlie will fill in that gap.
Should I do my amazing R2-D2 impression?
Yeah, go on. That sounds just like the real thing.
Phil.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do.
With a slight accent, I grant you.
That almost sounds like you've just
I didn't know he was
you've
from
just pressed a
Bristol.
button on a toy. That just
Cut down on those cigars.
So, striking back, does that mean we're covering Kevin Smith's films tonight, Becca?
yes. We're skipping Star
really?
Wars.
I'll see you later then.
Yeah.
Well, it does pretty much talk about Star Wars about 50% of the time. So
He just needs to make a Star Wars movie. That'd
Still,
be amazing.
Goodwill Hunting 2 Hunting Season was funny.
Oh my god.
that is a film I
And
want to
Will
see.
Ferrell throwing himself across the bonnet of the car to look amazing was funny as well.
That's one we have to do a commentary on.
We'll see.
What we're going to do a series on Kevin Smith? All right, then fine. We'll do that.
I don't think Charlie wants to join that one.
No, that'll be very niche, I think.
I mean, enjoy it.
Tell us what we are doing tonight, Becca.
Well, tonight we escape an icy planet, do some Jedi training on Dagobah, visit a city in the clouds, and more as we review Star Wars Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back, starring Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, Dave Prowse, Billy D. Williams, Kenny Baker, Alec Guinness, Frank Oz, and Jeremy Bulloch, and more. Score by John Williams, script by Lawrence Kasdan and Hugh Brackett, directed by Irvin Kershner, and released in 1980. So, do we think this is the best Star Wars film? Discuss.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Good night, folks.
No, I know Chris was going to say no. I'm quite happy to debate it. I actually understand Chris's perspective totally. But I had a fantastic viewing with this last night. Very noted. It's just a feature of the way I watch films that I have good and bad viewings, even of films I like.
Yeah, I didn't notice there was a trend.
So I'll go first very quickly. I had a really, really great viewing of this last night. I've always perceived Empire and Jedi to be structured very similarly, in that they both always had the problem to me that the first act is almost too long. Because the first act is never really a third of the film. It's normally a bit less than that. And next week, they'll be at Jabba's palace for the first 40 minutes or something. They're on Hoth for about 36 minutes, I think it is this time. Didn't feel too long this time. It normally does. This film whips along at a lovely pace. I think it's Harrison. I think it's the best Han Solo film, if you like, for me. People can disagree because of last week and so on, but he's just great. He's making it up as he goes along all the way through. I think Mark Hamill's a little bit better in this one because he's just a little bit more seasoned and so on. Yoda is one of the all-time great cinematic creations. And you've just basically got Darth Vader goes crazy, 8 bonkers with his drill and sex. Because he is just, he's
choking everyone left, right, and centre in this film, isn't he?
He is just like, he's calling people up. Someone once said to me, and it's obvious now, but I hadn't really thought about it at the time. He just leant into me in the cinema when the special edition was on. He said, he's just rung someone up to kill him. And that's just literally awesome.
Phone call of death.
There's a hint of darkness in it. Charlie's right. These were all like Universal rated films and stuff. But just seeing that little scarred back of Vader's head and, his staff looking a bit nervous about whether they should look or not. It's got a lovely sort of steely colour palette. This film has everything. And whilst it's not a complete saga, but I would argue it's a complete story. I think with the crawl, you can come in and take it on from here. It doesn't literally follow on from the last film, only in that the battle is carrying on. It's not Star Wars finished. It had a definitive finish. It does set up a third film, but I think sometimes films just do finish on like an attitude of hope. But I mean, I'll let Chris argue his corner in a minute on this film. But I honestly think
I'll beat it down in this episode.
None of these films. The saga is greater than the sum of its parts because actually, if I were to rank like my favourite films, The Empire Strikes Back is my favourite Star Wars film, but it's not in there. And it's not in there for probably some of the reasons you are getting at, Chris, because I need all the other films to create that feeling. But even as a standalone, I'm quite happy to watch The Empire Strikes Back. And I don't have to then go and watch Return of the Jedi or whatever. Every now and again, I can just stick this film in. I think it's the best acted. I think it's the most subtly written. I think it has the best dialogue. I think Harrison Ford is just phenomenal in this film. Darth Vader really becomes the cinematic legend here, not last week. You've also got the Imperial March for the first time, which is massive within cinema history and within this saga. You see the beginnings of a very sort of touching love between Leia and Han, but it's not a very traditional love in the way they express themselves, but you can see it there and they have real chemistry.
It's very much like pre-indie, isn't it? I mean, I felt very much that's an Indiana Jones, that's a prototype Indiana Jones going on there.
I didn't know if you were going to disagree with me, Chris, because I very nearly said it, in that I'm sat here watching it last night and I'm thinking, this is more like Indiana Jones than anything else I've seen him in.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually true, but it's that sense of making it up as he goes along. And he's like,
it's that bickering with Leia. It's that kind of like...
he keeps trying and watch this, and then the engine doesn't respond and things like that. I think I'll shut up now till we go into the film, but that's my first thoughts on it. I could have been more lukewarm. I wasn't, no pun intended. I thought that I would be cooler on it than I am, in that I think that everyone talks like this is a work of complete cinematic genius. But actually, I have to admit, wonderful viewing with this last night. Very strong, much better than last week, as good as Star Wars was, and I'm ready to really be positive as we talk through this.
It's just like Dave said, as great as Star Wars is, and obviously you can't have this without Star Wars. It's still it just takes it up several notches, and I guess because they knew that they would have because of the amount of money that Star Wars made, they knew they'd be able to really, as much as a financial risk this was, they still knew that they were going to be able to probably make the next two, so they could afford to actually act like this was now the middle of the trilogy, and because of that, it's allowed to be slowed down, and you're allowed to get a more idea into some of the things behind the scenes of the characters in their minds, that kind of thing, and you get to see them. It's nice that they split up all the heroes, so you have Luke going one way and Han and Leia and Chewie etc. going the other way, and the stuff on Dagobah is just amazing, and all the scenes with Yoda, there's just such an inspiration behind them, not only in the way they're performed, but the way they're written as well, and then the way it all kind of comes together with Vader and the whole kind of denouement on Cloud City. And it's just the emotional stakes are so high in this film, and it's to a point that doesn't really, even in like when it's like Revenge of the Sith or something like that, where it's really dark, those stakes are never really matched again in the saga. It's the music's amazing. It's shot amazing. The dialogue is brilliant. It's written really well. And I think it's intentional. Both this and Raiders went back to this kind of 40s kind of screwball romantic comedies, that kind of snappy back and forth dialogue. The set pieces in this film are just impeccable. And
I mean, I've never found it in a decent wallpaper format, but the bit where in the carbon freezing chamber where they meet and their lightsabers come on might be one of the most perfect shots in history.
In terms of like design, like as in like how it looks, like I mean how the sets are built and.
Oh yeah, but just
the one shot.
Just this, but also just the sequences. Yeah, I mean, I can pick up this. The Empire has my favourite shot in the whole saga, which is as soon as the carbon freeze button is pressed and it all goes off, and C-3PO goes, "What's going on? I can't see." The smoke clears to reveal Darth Vader, and it's just the most amazing, beautiful, monstrous shot. But I mean, in terms of the set piece, like the asteroid field scene, it's just. Yeah. I can see just conceptually, it's just so amazing. All the AT-ATs, the Battle of Hoth, and it's just the way it's pulled off, and it's just breathtaking, and it doesn't ever fail to elicit a sense of danger, despite the fact.
It also broadens the universe, doesn't it, Charlie? In that, not only do we actually see the Emperor this time, and I know we've seen different versions of the film, but the first film was really all about Luke. This film starts with a completely different thing, in that I know Han's got to go and save Luke, but the Battle of Hoth is just all about this ragtag trying to survive, and I don't think it's any accident they're in such a hostile environment.
No,
I mean, ice is, you can't just wander around in ice.
Absolutely, and it shows where they have to go to be able to hide from the Empire, and what happens when they're found. And you see that everything that Vader does is as a consequence of him wanting Luke.
What I also love about Vader in this film is he walks everywhere purposefully.
Yeah.
The walk is amazing. I mean, the cape is a big part of it as well. I was only thinking that today when he disembarks onto Hoth and walks through as they're about to leave. Firstly, the sort of pace he walks at, but also that flowing cape. It looks fantastic. What you say, Becca?
There are a lot of capes in this film.
Yeah. Lando's cape is amazing as well.
Edna Mode from The Incredibles wouldn't.
Lando's has a bit of Liberace about it. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a very fancy cape, definitely. But no, I would agree to you.
He's definitely bisexual.
What, Lando or
Lando,
or Liberace?
Yeah. But I mean,
we're having a discussion of podcast about sexuality. But no, I think everywhere, like every time Vader's on screen, basically you can just feel it. Just terrifying.
Yeah, and just what saying another thing to kind of cap it off. Just people go on about this film about it being like so dark and etc. And it is. It's dark. It's dramatic, which I think is more relevant than it being dark. And there's much more of a mythic tone to it than Star Wars kind of had. Whereas kind of Star Wars was like a fairy tale, but this is coming much more into kind of Greek myth kind of thing, and a Greek tragedy as well. But it's so bloody funny. It's hit the film all the way through from R2 and 3PO, and all of Han Solo's dialogue, and just these kind of little interludes, and even getting to Vader, and his choking, and it's like bits of Yoda and things like that. And it's just really, really funny all the way through, and I kind of feel it doesn't necessarily get the that kind of credit. But
in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be talking about their attempt at comedy was Jar Jar stepping in some shit.
Yeah,
and it's like I'm all slapstick work, but you just look at this, and I just think, well, Han and Leia are inspired in this film. In every scene, they're together. It's wonderful stuff, but Becca, you go next, because I'm trying to wait for Chris to kill the podcast in a minute.
Oh no. I'm a bit mixed, really. I mean, I would.
Oh, fuck off, Becca!
Yay! Becca's on my side. No,
okay, go on.
Well, I'm that weird one who tends to like. Yeah, but no, that's no bad thing. That's no bad thing. I'm the weird one who tends to like. Well, where the first movie is rubbish in a series, that's the exception. But I'm the strange one who tends to think like the first film was best. So I'd prefer last week's film, and like the same with The Godfather as well. I do think the first one. I mean, they're all amazing, but the first one for me is the best in the trilogy. But then again, when we ranked the Bonds, I didn't put Doctor No at number 1. But anyway, so that's just pulled that theory right from underneath my feet. But never mind. It does go a little bit too dark for me. But I mean, the dialogue is a lot better than last week. It looks more beautiful. I mean, then the effects still hold up today, which is really good. The action, set pieces are really memorable. I'd say that shot with the lightsabers is just one of the most iconic scenes in cinema, not just in the Star Wars universe. But yeah, it does go a little bit too dark for my tastes. But it was largely improved by going to the Secret Cinema Star Wars a couple of summers ago, and that was the film that was screened and also kept in the charts that year. And that was just immense, and you could feel fans' love for the film in the room. There's so much love for that movie. As the group of friends that I went with, literally we were kind of split down the middle. Some of us, really liked it and were like, oh yeah, best in the series, and the rest were like, no, this is terrible. I'd prefer, the first one or the next one, sort of thing. That kind of having that experience really helped me to understand the film better and have a better experience of it. I must say, watching it before this podcast, I didn't have a great time with it, but I have seen it on previous viewings, and I've enjoyed it a lot more.
I would say, child, Becca.
No, so that's one of the things you sort of come to, don't you? I thought it was
a boring one when I was a kid. It came to me much more in my teens.
Yeah, I think you have to be of a certain mindset.
Yeah, you have to force yourself to like it, I think.
You have to really kind of enjoy it, and it's kind of more.
You are the person who's really, when we talked through Bond, when we were talking about the Maurice Binder and Danny Kleinman sequences at the start of the film, you were really not happy with Skyfall because it was too tough and depressing.
It was very depressing.
It's not you. This film isn't you. I'm not surprised to hear this, actually.
That's not to say I don't enjoy it. I do like it. I just happen to prefer the first one. But no, it's it's still fantastic. Still very enjoyable. But for me, it is a tinge on the dark side. Bum bum. But no, apart from that, I'm kind of in the middle. But as I say, it doesn't mean I don't hate it. I still really enjoy it, but a little bit for me. But I do, there are great lines, so many great lines. I do love how like Vader literally phones people up to say, right, that's the last time you disappointed me, Lieutenant. Or whatever, Admiral.
I just love that bit where one of the generals says, right, well, I'm gonna apologise to Lord Vader. You think, yeah, you're dead.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, you're dead now,
buddy. You kind of wonder. I wonder if he realises this.
Yeah, yeah, and he's like, oh dear.
No,
and obviously, we get the classic scruffy-looking nerf herder line, which is just the ultimate put-down ever.
Who you calling scruffy?
Who's scruffy-looking? Managed to kind of use that in a bar on a guy to get him to go away from me. So he's like, yes. So.
And then he followed you forever because you're a Star Wars fan.
Thank you for that. So, but yeah, there's just so many iconic scenes, and lines in this movie as well. And the whole thing
But
of Lando as well.
You find it a little bit lacking in lightness.
Yeah, that's it, definitely. There's kind of that section which is kind of missing for me, but on the whole, I still enjoyed it. Anyway, Chris, tell us your point of view.
Yes.
Look, come on.
Look,
the other side.
To be honest, I think I've overplayed
Of course,
destination.
we've talked about this offline a few times, Chris.
Yeah,
actually.
I mean, look, I've kind of overplayed it, and to be honest, most of what Dave and Charlie and Becca have said, I absolutely agree with. I mean, by all accounts, the best made Star Wars film. In terms of how it's written, Dave said about this is probably the best Harrison Ford performance in a Star Wars film. I completely agree. The stuff with Han and Leia is important. I love how they split those two from Luke, because I think it's pivotal for those two storylines to go for romance between Han and Leia, and for Luke to go and do his training.
You don't want them there while Luke's like watching.
Yeah, no, but it actually is. It makes absolute sense. I cannot fault in terms of like the story as a whole and what it means to the series. I mean, I think and I can understand why fans like this film the most, because everything.
So actually, Chris, what you're saying that if you actually took away the barriers of the start and end of films out of this is the best section of Star Wars?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand why, because if we're talking literally like TV episodes, we can say, right, well, that was a good couple of episodes. I think there's a lot of meat in here, but it's all kind of set up for Jedi. We've had Star Wars set up a characters, and it was a really good, fun sci-fi adventure. Now we're getting to like kind of meat of this, where we get all that kind of like the interesting stuff kind of build up, and everything's kind of wound up. Now everything gets let loose in Jedi. But the problem is, on its own, in isolation, this film doesn't have a lot of payoff.
This is why I said the best section of Star Wars as opposed to the best.
Yeah, I mean,
Star Wars.
Okay. I see your point, and this gets to my other point, and I think you kind of alluded to before, but I found the first part of this really boring. And I think,
Hoth is my least favourite bit.
Sorry.
Hoth is my least favourite bit.
And I kind of realised why I'm not really taken with this film as much as everyone else. And I think I find this film really, really boring. I find the last half better. I think it picks up back then. But then we're left with, I don't understand where it has to do to kind of set off with a cliffhanger, but there's less revelation. We get kind of like the big twist, which is like, Luke, I am your father.
No.
Which I imagine at that time would have blown everyone's minds. And justifiably so. I think it's a great sort of twist in the series. But that's all you have, really. I mean, it's there's not there's no emotional payoff, and I kind of have to bite my lip a little bit every time I see it. Like it mentioned as like the greatest film of all time. I'm like thinking, right, okay, well, if an alien spaceship landed and they asked you, well, what do you do for entertainment? Think, we watch movies. Oh, what's the greatest movie of all time? The Empire Strikes Back. You wouldn't just show them like Empire Strikes Back on the isolation, because I'd be thinking, well, for starters, I'll probably think, hang on, space is nothing like this. This is bullshit. But
why would you have to watch it?
Yeah, but there's no real beginning. I mean, it starts off really slow, and then like there's no. It assumes we know these characters, and it doesn't really have a satisfactory ending. I don't understand the.
Hang on a minute.
Well, it's not supposed to.
I know. It is.
The first film started in media res, as we said last week. That's how the episodic thing works.
Yes, I understand.
I have some sympathy with your no ending argument, although I don't agree. I have no sympathy with your no start argument. Because every chapter would start a bit like this.
Okay. That's a fair.
They
comment.
were in the middle of going on to the Tantive 4 during the.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
The first one starts in the middle of something. Clearly.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually a fair.
Okay.
Fair. I think the beginning could have been done a lot better. I think I noticed they did a lot of unnecessary things. And I thought, okay, this is just kind of very kind of plodding. I think it should have gotten to the attack on Hoth a lot quicker. That would have been a lot more better start to the film. I think we should have had a little bit more excitement with the Empire chasing Han and Leia. That just seems to be a lot of like hanging around asteroids and back of starships. It just felt kind of dull. But that said, I understand where the meat of it Star Wars is. It's the most quotable. It is the most quotable. It's a lot of everyone's favourite scenes in it. It's got Yoda. You know, I understand. I just can't agree.
The original cut of Star Wars: A New Hope, the first version of it, was I think 118 minutes, so 2 minutes short of 2 hours with credits and everything else. This one is 2 hours and 7 in its special edition. I think if you trimmed Hoth enough to make it the same length as the original cut of A New Hope, I think it would be stronger. But to be honest, I think that's just me. It isn't just me, because you've just said the same thing. I had a much better time with Hoth last night than I've had with it for a long time. Mm. But you are kind of right. There's an awful lot of messing around with, Luke at the start of the film and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but you need to show where these characters have moved to, because all we know from the crawl is that Luke is essentially kind of in control of them, or a leading part of it now, because he's mentioned in the crawl somewhere, or maybe I'm thinking of the comics adaptation. Either way, you need to know where these characters are. So you look at it now. Luke is now a commander of the Rebel Alliance. That's a pretty high rank that he's through. And then you see the relationship that he still has with Han, where Han is. Obviously, Han from there, we're told pretty immediately, that he has to leave. So that puts a kind of a tension on there. And then you see that Luke's powers have to kind of grow towards being able to do, like, kind of pulling the lightsaber into his hand and things like that. As well as kind of just setting up a bit of overall tension, and also putting it on the onus on the love triangle between Luke, Han, and Leia.
I think that the important sequences in this, from a character perspective, from a sort of world perspective, the fact that they're in the ice and about to be attacked and everything else is probably most important. I thought him reaching for his lightsaber and the whole telekinesis thing was vital, because I don't think we'd seen that before. And that becomes quite important later in the film, i.e. why is Vader able to think objects towards Luke when they're fighting. I think everything Carrie and Han is very, very important here. I do think that... I just think those two are gold, and I do think if I don't get back to Jabba the Hutt, I'm a dead man.
Yeah.
All of that is very, very
that's
important.
The thing. I mean,
and I want a Waldorf salad.
It's the way. it's the way they kind of show the relationships changing, and so at the beginning you've got when Han and Luke are out there. You've got saying, Princess, there's nothing more we can do tonight. The shield doors must be closed. And there's an amazing shot where the shield doors start closing and the camera just dollies in on Carrie Fisher's face. And you see there's her worrying about Luke. And especially there as after that, when Luke's rescued and back in as well. And there's that the nerfed a bit with Han. And there was, because I know there was a cut scene before where she did actually have a little kiss with Luke, but then from that you kind of see it opening further towards Han as they do split up from there, and I just think it's just really good character work, and that's what this film is all about, and I think that's why some people call it boring, because they do spend a fair amount of time sitting on an asteroid hiding from the Empire. But again, it's kind of what's needed there to kind of get those character moments. Because where you have a film like Star Wars, which needed that pace to not just as a film, but to kind of set everything up as well to make it so it could go on, then it just needed to go a mile a minute, where that film kind of does. But this, as the second in the trilogies normally do, just kind of opens it up and slows it down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually disagree with you, Charlie. I mean, in terms of what it means for the characters. I mean, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I just think it could have been done better, particularly at the beginning. I mean, the stuff with Luke and the lightsaber, all that's kind of done primarily with Yoda. So why do we need to see it here? But if we do need to see it there, this can be done within the battle sequence on Hoth. You know, like the Vision, Luke's ship gets crashed down. He kind of tumbles out, and he kind of gets a bit hazy, and he sees Vision of Obi-Wan telling him to go to Hoth. Done. You know, we don't need the stuff with the big Yeti.
I'm not sure I completely agree. We don't forget as well, he was badly injured between the two films.
Yeah, I know.
So I think that was why, I don't think that's why it was written in, actually. But I think it's a happy accident, if there's such a thing for this sort of scenario, to explain his facial style, or at least the changing shape of his face. I'll split the difference with you, Chris, and it doesn't mean I'm right necessarily, but my attitude on this is that I don't think it could have been done better. I do think it could have been done a little bit faster. I think 37 minutes is too long for what we get out of this. But it is nowhere near as bad as next week that way. And I like Return of the Jedi. But by and large, there is a lot to enjoy in this. And I just think the whole idea of a ragtag of people stuck in such a hostile environment because of desperation. They go out to just do minor things, and they could die. And we know that the Empire could be on them at any moment. And at the same time, Han and Leia are wrestling with relatively complex, for this type of film, emotions. And I say complex because they both kind of admit they like each other, but kind of don't. Some of it is all caught up with circumstances, the type of man Han knows he is, the whole Jabba dynamic to everything. I don't think there's a lot wrong with this, other than I would have liked to have seen it south of half an hour for what we get out of this.
I will say this. I completely understand why they did in regards to Mark Hamill. But I'll be honest, if they hadn't, I personally, I wouldn't have noticed that much difference. I would just assume, oh well, a passage of time, and
which is funny because
he's been in the war, so he just aged a little bit. Hamill. You know,
no, he looks dramatically different, but that's actually how long we've all lived with Mark Hamill. That our minds almost adjust around it. Because if you put photos of them next to each other, his nose is a completely different shape.
Yeah, he does look really different.
I mean, you know what? It's probably me. It's probably just me. I mean, maybe I'm just willing to kind of I understand it was a horrible thing to happen. And I'm just willing to But
my primary argument is not it's all worth it because Luke and his face. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that there are a few sort of almost happy accidents with all of that. The hostility of the environment is fine. It needs to breathe a little bit for reasons Charlie just said, that you've got to know where they've come from, but also if you're in a desolate, desperate environment that's difficult to live in, and most of your life is boredom because you're sat there almost worrying what might be coming rather than actually doing something. If you're through that in 7 or 8 minutes, then you've not given it anything like the weight it deserves, and you lose everything. But I would not argue the point that it couldn't be a little zippier than it is.
Yeah, and I do want to stress, I don't hate the film. I really don't. I like it. I like it as part of the series and what it means. But I can only ever watch it as I'm watching the entire series as a whole, you know, if I had a choice of throwing on any Star Wars film, it will never be Empire. But I understand why this means a lot to fans, and you know, and I understand because I it does jump out to me in terms of quality, you know, in how it looks and how it feels. That it is a better constructed film than the others. So I completely understand, and I don't. Just want to stress, I don't hate this film. So any Star Wars fans, Charlie.
Well, we're going to ask.
I don't hate it.
We are going to ask you to prove it as we discuss this film sequentially.
Yes.
Okay.
So, Charlie, you got a better memory and bigger love of this film. What's in the crawl? Not necessarily word for word, but what's the gist of?
That's putting you on the spot.
I know.
It's basically it is a dark time for the rebellion. Although the Death Star has been destroyed, the small pack of freedom fighters have been chased across, or driven from their base and chased across the galaxy by the evil Galactic Empire or what have you. And the small band of rebels has set up base on the ice planet of Hoth, evading the dreaded Imperial Starfleet. I feel really bad now because I should know this off by heart. And as the Darth Vader, obsessed with finding young Skywalker, has dispatched thousands of probe droids into the far reaches of space. So then begins with a Star Destroyer, but it's a very different kind of shot than...
It's off at an angle.
Yeah. It's coming towards you as well, isn't it?
Isn't it off its sort of hindquarters? Oh no, yeah, it's straight on to start with. And then it's hindquarters when the probe comes out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So you see like a bunch of probes, and they sort of land on Hoth, and then we get straight onto Luke, and he's on a what they called? Tauntaun. And you see. Sorry.
Or a Don if it's the...
No, I just want to make one point at the outset, and it's not a criticism, because as stop motion goes, this is a very good example, very well done. But if there's one thing that dates this film over the first one, it is because they use a lot more stop motion in this film. It does look a little bit more like that. We see it with the AT-ATs, although that's done extraordinarily well. But the Tauntauns, I think, are one of the few weak effects in the film now in terms of how it stands up.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I don't mind them.
It's not a criticism.
It has it has a little bit of nostalgia to it. It's like, oh, I remember them. And he's like, I kind of
It's a 37-year-old film. I'm not being hard on.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a hard on.
You're not getting a hard on. That's the point, Dave.
Yeah.
And he basically sort of like calls in what he thinks it's an asteroid, but he's going to check it out. But then he gets attacked by. Is it been named by this creature, or is it just kind of a Yeti type thing?
It's called a Wampa.
I'm not sure if it's named in the film, but we know it to be a Wampa.
Okay, it's a big Wampa, and he knocks him on the head and drags him away.
I think it's interesting that this opening really sets up the difference between the Empire and the Rebellion, and how desperate they are. Because in a minute when Han goes off, they're told the speeders are still adapting to the cold, so they have to go out on these Tauntauns because they can't use their spaceships and their speeders and what have you, which we're normally used to. Whereas you have the Empire sending all these robot droid probes out. It's immediately kind of shows where it's at in terms of this chase, and how they are still this kind of ragtag team of rebels as against the technological might of the Empire.
I mean, you think of something like Star Trek, where our point of view is always the Enterprise, and they can scan everything.
Yeah.
Here something lands deep in the ice somewhere out there. You got binoculars and that's about it. And it's like, what's that? We don't really fucking know. It could be really dangerous, or it could be nothing. And that's quite effective as storytelling, because if they're our point of view, then they don't know and we don't know either.
Yeah, he doesn't just get out a tricorder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but then so Luke is knocked down by the Wampa, and then
we go straight to Han get returning.
Yeah.
I think they basically done like a circuit. Han's returned.
Yes.
And he goes.
It's like, where's Luke? He should have been back sometime.
Yeah, he goes straight to the control room, has a chat with the general, saying like, "Oh, I've got to go to pay off Jabba.
Yeah.
I'm a wanted man." And they go and it's like talk about him like, "Oh, you've been a good soldier. We're gonna miss you." And wartime Leia's giving him evil, saying like, "Oh, why are you fucking off? You should be staying here."
And then they have a big
yeah. Which to me kind of sums up like the entire relationship where they're going. I mean, obviously, like there's like an unlearning romance where they both fighting it.
Yeah.
But they don't want to show. No one want to show weakness and giving him and kind of like going like, "Oh, I love you," or anything like one of those lines. So they're both putting on the like, "I don't need you," or "I don't need you," kind of attitude.
Front, aren't they?
Yeah,
I do like that tension between them. Actually, I think that's obviously we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah.
But I do like that tension. I just think that's fantastic.
You've got to have two very, very strong personalities to make that work. I mean, you couldn't stick, for example, adjusted for age, a Meg Ryan.
Yeah.
In this, because there's nothing wrong with Meg Ryan, by the way. She's been absolutely fine in a lot of rom-coms, but you got to be a lot feistier than her to make this work.
Yeah.
You've got to have two very strong characters to sell.
Because
this.
of Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, that it really sparks fly.
Yeah, and I think Carrie Fisher because of her documented issues over the years and the fact that
and she was quite sparky, quite spunky.
Well, she went off and wrote a lot, and she's not primarily thought of as a great actress now, but you wouldn't want to understate her importance in this.
I think she is.
Not just the role. I'm not saying she isn't. I'm saying she's not considered a great actress necessarily. I don't think that's particularly debatable. She's not thought of as a great actress with a great acting career behind her. She is very, very strong in this. It takes a strong character and a strong personality.
Well, she's very funny as well. I mean, as a person, I think that kind of like they both. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, apparently it was revealed that her and Harrison had a thing going on during
the first film.
Was it on the first film?
Yeah, it's a 3-month affair during the making of the first one.
So I don't know if that played a part, or I don't know, but there is on-screen chemistry with the two. I think it helps how she is very feisty. Like, I think that comes across in real life. I think she's quite a feisty kind of like quirky kind of person. But here she's basically like being stubborn, and he's being stubborn, but in a kind of like, come on, you love it, don't you? You can't be, kind of almost like trying to tease her out of it, and she's like kind of like, no, piss off.
Do you know what? It also reminds me a little bit, just from watching it a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't fall off his chair, but I was watching Cheers, and I was watching.
It's been a while
Cheers,
since we mentioned him,
and it was towards the end of the first season with him and Diane, and it's almost like he's going crazy. 'Cause, I mean, there's no suggestion, by the way, that Sam Malone as a character would hit a woman. But there's certainly a bit towards the end of like the first season where he's so frustrated, he's almost tearing his fucking hair out not to like grab her and throttle her. And there's a bit of that here. The dynamic of Sam Malone with Diane is kind of similar, actually. That they both fucking infuriate each other for everything. And they probably always will. And that's one of the things where we get to The Force Awakens and they're no longer together. Forget the reasons why, just the fact that they didn't endure doesn't actually surprise me. I always think they would have had a really good crack at it, and they did love each other, and I doubt it was over within 5 minutes. But at the same time, they're both really strong, sparky characters that would piss each other off quite a lot.
I imagine, especially in this film, there's like they're almost at a point that they would cut their nose off to spite their face. They would like, just they will not back down.
So the whole point is all of these sort of droids. Obviously, Han goes out to get Luke, and has to sort of pack him inside the body of a Tauntaun to keep him warm.
Which is very like a Western idea, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what was this the foundation for this in other films? I mean, we've seen like kind of things like in the Revenant now. And I wonder, was this was this like the origin of that kind of cutting out a horse, or was this inspired by other westerns?
I don't know, if I'm honest. Do you?
Inspired, I imagine. No, I don't. But I imagine it was probably inspired.
I wish I could bullshit something, but I'd be guessing.
Yeah, it was just a thought. As I was wondering, I can't think of another example that pre this. So I wonder if this was like.
I mean, making use of your surroundings wouldn't.
Yeah.
And if we sat and thought about it, we could come out with a lot of films where they may do in a certain environment. But literally, encamping yourself inside the body, the hollowed out body of another creature, I can't think of anything like that.
It was convenient that he died as soon as he got to Luke, though. It was like, oh, right, well, I don't have to feel bad about cutting open.
Yeah, I know. It's not the most elegant effect as well as it splits open. But, I mean, that is what it is. I do find that busy work as much as it isn't busy work. There's an absolute defence for why that's in the film. But obviously, it's one of the bits in a film I've seen many, many times that I just go, yeah, spin on a bit. The whole point of the probe droids are they're looking for Luke. Now, this, you might be able to help me here, Charlie. I don't know, I can't remember the difference between, and I'm spinning on a bit here, the two conversations Vader has with the Emperor. Because in the cut we see now, he seems really surprised at the idea that's his son. But yet we've had a film of him obsessed with finding young Skywalker, which in the whole context of the film makes me think he already knows. Is he lying to the Emperor? Has the dialogue been changed? Or is it just a bit ham-fisted?
They definitely changed it.
Okay.
They changed it for when the DVD came out.
Okay. Maybe we'll come back to that in a minute. But he's trying to he's looking for Luke, and they found that they're on Hoth. So the Empire sends what it's got after that little ragtag. And it's really funny now, because when you look at it, the AT-AT effects have just started to date. The stop motion element to it. I still think it looks really lovely.
No, I can't really see much fault in it.
You can see you can see it stop motion now, even though they put a bit of motion blur between the frames. So
that's
they
the only
did
thing
what
that
they
dates
could.
it, really, but it still looks fantastic.
Because they are mechanical. Because it's not like the Tauntaun. It's not like representing something actually.
But it's better. It's better stop motion than the Tauntaun, and that may be because of scale. Or it may be because the battle was important, they put more time to it. More frames means more granularity of movement. So I suspect that's the answer. All I'm saying is, when I watch it now, I can tell it's stop motion.
Because it's a machine as well, you kind of expect more sort of mechanical jerky movement.
No, I think Charlie's right. I think it actually worked. I still think it looks fantastic, actually.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
I was stunned.
Yeah, it still looks great.
I mean, to be honest, I think I'd rather use this technique today rather than like just CGI.
Well, I just think I'm not sure I agree with that, Chris. But
or mixture, I guess like a mixture.
Well, I prefer like the puppet Yoda over CGI Yoda.
I'd rather have it done well than full of like holes, but they did it more honestly. But at the same time, I think from a behind the scenes perspective, I'd rather watch DVD extras on this sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
Because when you look at it. And you see, like, fully grown men stood around, like, the AT-ATs that are only, like, 12 to 18 inches high on a set. And then you watch the film, and it doesn't look like it's a set. That element of how did they do that has disappeared now. Because you watch this, and honestly, to this day, even with... I still don't know how even though I know how they did it, and even though I know it's stop motion, there's an element of me that just thinks it looks like it's real, and they have got like 200 feet AT-ATs on a real stage with people. It looks incredible. And how they've managed to photograph that from little models. Well, you don't have that with CG. How did you do that? Well, I programmed it in.
Yeah, it's some of the shot choices as well. Because, I mean, that's one thing about this film compared to Star Wars is it's a lot more complex when it comes to kind of shots and things like that. And because there's a couple of shots, like, just like, there's the one where it goes, obviously, where it goes through the AT-AT's legs, and there's another one where a couple of them, you see the AT-AT from like 3/4 above, and then the snow speeders go around it. And it's just so, yeah, one kind of pulling off these kind of shots with models and with motion control and stop motion and things like that. It is just amazing.
It's wonderful. It's amazing. The lighting on this, and it gives it a scale. It looks like they're on the sort of ice and snow at 6 feet tall or average human height, and these 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever they are, mechanical things are marching towards them. Because of the stop motion, you can see it's slightly herky-jerky. You can see it's not quite real, but it is lit absolutely spot on. It doesn't look like miniatures. If you took a still shot, it still doesn't. In movement, you can see there's a bit of stop motion there, but I know they put the motion blur in.
Yeah,
which is what the problem with stop motion is. There's no blur between the different shots.
Exactly.
If you and I moved, there's a bit of blur.
But the also the way they introduce the AT-ATs through the binoculars.
Yeah, it's a sudden what the fuck's that?
Yes, it's just like you sit in it. It starts at the foot, and then it goes up to the head, and then pulls out. And so you're seeing these things for the first time through that grainy kind of binoculars, and then kind of it shows them properly. It's such an effective way of establishing these things as kind of real things.
And I find that shot really immersive.
I want a Waldorf salad.
Waldorf salad.
And with a screwdriver.
For those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, the British sitcom Fawlty Towers has an episode called Waldorf Salad, where there's an American guy with his British wife visiting this hotel, and he's demanding a Waldorf salad. He's quite a hard-ass guy demanding a certain level of service, and he's obviously being let down by John Cleese's Basil Fawlty character. He plays the kind of general, boss, whatever you want to call it.
General Reichian.
There you go. I didn't actually ever know his name.
Guy called Bruce Bower.
And also a special shout out to Do You Expect to Talk veteran Julie Glover, who plays
General Veers.
Yes.
Yeah,
that name I do know. We were talking during
Indy and now Star Wars. How about that?
Well, we talked about it more through Bond than we did Indy. He's a bigger character in Indy, but during Bond we were pointing out how he disappears into a role. Now, eyes and nose, you can tell it's him. I mean, he doesn't literally disappear. It's him, but he looks and sounds so different, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he really does.
This is probably closer.
Did I mention him in the cast? No, I didn't. I have to lift him
probably
out.
Closer to the real him than anything else.
What, he's a evil general working for
I meant how he looks and sounds. You're bellend.
I know.
One thing.
Julian Glover is lovely.
One thing about this film and the previous one as well is certainly in this film the amount of people that are dubbed. Again, we found it in the last film.
You mean dubbing us in different voices, or just mean ADR?
Yeah. Okay. So we had it with Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, and also the bartender. If you watch the original Star Wars trailer, the bartender's got a proper London voice instead of the your droids. They can't come in here. We don't want them there. So the guy.
Hold up! Fuck off!
He's like,
Is that Danny Dyer?
He's like, no blasters, no blasters. So the guy Rogue 2, who is a guy called Zev. He's an actor called Christopher Malcolm, and he was in what was the one with Lumley and Saunders?
Fab.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, he was. He was. I think he may have been Saffron's father, but he was certainly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Ex.
Oh yeah.
And his
with
voice,
like a limp in it.
Yeah, his voice is
He
dubbed.
died fairly recently.
Yeah.
By recently, I mean within about the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And Irish
Den-
actor, yeah.
Dennis Lawson's voice is dubbed as well. Again, here he's got an
he sounds a bit
American
different
accent.
as well.
But in Return of the Jedi, he goes back to his real voice.
Yeah.
That's a bit weird, isn't it? Oh well, not his
What-
voice, but
what-
the fact that it was dubbed.
So, what else do we want to say about Hoth, guys?
Well, what's
It's
always
cold.
amazing to
Very
me
cold.
as a kid is they lose.
Yeah, I mean, they get their
Yeah, they
asses
rock like
kicked.
fuck, yeah.
They get fucked, really.
I mean,
And
I do like the tactic of like, let's evacuate and let's shoot like a laser at the Empire, and then like throwing the path of a laser, let's just dart out of there. Like, I think that's like a kind of like a good solid tactic, really. I like the thought behind that.
Not Obi-Wan, sorry. C-3PO pisses me off a bit in this film. He's kind of irritating. He's meant to be. It's fine. But I do kind of it. They're rushing to get away before they die, and he's like, "Wait for me!"
But he does break the fourth wall
He
Where?
does.
because he said wait for me, and then the door closes and he turns around and says, "How typical." And he's blatantly, he
Is he? I've never ever noticed that.
absolutely breaks the fourth wall.
It's got to be
Okay,
meant to the
yeah,
audience,
please.
surely.
Okay.
And it's just to me, it's always been a hysterical moment. And yeah, he's annoying as fuck, but
He's meant to be.
he's absolutely meant to be.
I had a better time with Hoth this time than I normally have. I'm kind of, splitting the difference on it in that, like, I now think it's very good. I think it flows into the film very nicely. I think it's paced very well, actually. But I'm kind of with Chris a little bit. It could lose a little bit, but it tells a very nice story. It does tell us where we're meant to be. It shows you basically how outgunned they are and what horrible conditions they have to live in most of the time. And it also shows you all the Han Leia stuff you need to know. It shows you how Luke's Jedi skills are starting to develop. And it's a pretty decent action sequence as it goes as well.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I just found it kind of as an action sequence. I mean, in terms of the things it does, I agree. But in terms of how it plays out, I just felt it just was a bit of a slog for me personally. But then that's my personal opinion. I can't.
That's
I
cool.
can't change
It is.
that.
I mean, Act Two is a lot better because obviously they
Yeah.
get off. They got off the planet. They split up, which Charlie's right. I think that's absolutely genius. We go with Han first, don't we?
For me, it's like it's a natural thing you should do. I mean, I think I'll be surprised if we don't get that. I think we definitely are already there, aren't we? We're Last Jedi. They already
You
are
don't have to
split off.
split all three of them, but they certainly has to be. If it's three of them, there has to be at least two parties.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because they, I mean, and again, this is one thing that this film always stood out for me because there's all these tiny little moments. Is really they split up when Luke goes off in his snowspeeder, and Han's still there trying to repair the Millennium Falcon, and the Millennium Falcon's parts of it's exploding, and you've got Chewie going, and then Luke comes out. And Chewie hugs him, and then Han, they're like doing their manly kind of, they don't want to kind of say goodbye type thing. And then Luke leaves, and then it just for a moment focuses on Han, has a close-up of Harrison Ford. And it's just a really kind of thoughtful moment where you can see the real kind of...
This is the last time these characters are going to spend some time together for some while.
And for all Han knows, that could be it because of the
exactly,
whole
yeah. And then
Becca, what did you think of all this?
I don't mind the scene actually. I just think it's funny how like the cold planet is basically spelled hot with an H on the end.
I've never thought of that.
It's an ice planet and it's called hot with extra. No, I just kind of noticed that. I thought that was a bit silly. I think it's really cool. It's one of the iconic worlds of the film, really, isn't it? No, I like it in general.
Find a different color palette and environment for each film.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got here we obviously see Hoth, the ice base, and then later on, Dagobah and Cloud City. Look very different. Iconic worlds, all very different. So much that you can It's
but they
almost you can
strip a
touch
lot
them,
of
you
the
can smell
colour
them,
out
you
of
know.
Dagobah. So when I think of the first film, I tend to think of very sand tones. When I think of
That's
the
true.
third film, I think of very forest. When
This
I
one's
think
quite
of this
icy
film, I
and-
think of like blacks and whites and greys.
Yeah,
It's very kind of.
Yeah, considering it's all snow, he does a very good job. I mean, the cinematographer is a guy called Peter Strzicki, and he's actually basically he does pretty much, or he has done pretty much every one of David Cronenberg's films.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
That's why they look the way they do.
sorry if I just stolen one of your fun facts.
No,
Good. And he's
I'll just quickly
That's
cross
fun,
one out and
folks.
write another one. Bugger.
and it's just
It's
just
fine.
the amazing the kind of tones he used. But I mean, did you know about? Again, I didn't want to steal any of your fun facts
No,
again.
that's
but
fine. No, that's okay. Don't worry.
the subplot that was cut out
Go ahead.
with the Wampus,
Go for it.
where there was a whole set of sequence scenes in the Rebel base where the Wampus kind of broke in and attacked the rebels.
Was this like before? So obviously this is before like the Empire came in.
Yeah,
That
Because
just
this-
would have been
It was
like
during episode
shit
2.
sandwich then, wouldn't it? Be like, oh, we just survived all of this like attack from these vicious creatures. Oh, guess what, guys? The Empire's here. Shit.
what they ended up doing is that the rebels they ended up kind of corralling them into a room, and what they did is they put a warning sign on front of it, and when Han and Leia and 3PO are trying to get to the Millennium Falcon, C-3PO goes past, and they know the Imperial troopers are in there, and he rips the sign off, and then the Imperial troopers go in the room and get attacked by the Wampus. And you can still see like a bit where he walks past, and you can see the sign on the door. In one of the trailers, you see him ripping off the sign. But yeah, there's kind of a big subplot that they had that they just completely excised for much for the better.
It's probably just for budget reasons as well, wouldn't it? I mean, it probably would have just added more. It just would have like prolonged the whole.
They were up against it as it was. This film, as I understand, cost about $40 million.
Yeah.
And to get completion money, they had to like give up points and stuff on the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were up against it on this.
Yeah. So, but I mean, they shot it all, and it's all on the Blu-ray. All the deleted.
That defeats our point. If they shot it, they spent the money. To be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, there was like a scripted or at least like storyboarded sequence with the death of General Veers as like one of the the ships goes straight into like basically the head of the A-10 and just like explodes the head essentially.
Yeah.
I know that much, but that's about as much I know in terms of the lead stuff.
I mean, there's a fair bit of stuff they kind of cut out, and there's like a fair bit of stuff on Dagobah as well, and there's a lot of music they cut out as well. I mean, it seems like there is still a lot of music in the film, and it's amazing. But there's kind of certain kind of sequences where it is just the sound effects, and really. It's really well done because of that, and there are parts where you think the music would have been a bit intrusive, but yeah, off. So Luke goes off to Dagobah, and Han goes off to with Leia.
He's basically just like straightly on the run from the Empire because they're on his tail, aren't they?
Well, yeah, because he was last to leave, which is genius when you think about it. Yeah, he was last to leave, so they're straight on the back of him, and he's about to go to light speed, and it doesn't work.
Mm.
Which I love that. This is the guy that goes on to play Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Totally like, let's try this. Oh, fuck, it doesn't work. What now?
Yeah.
And
Literally just flying through by the seat of his pants.
I think as well, something that maybe isn't recognised, usually because he can't speak, is Peter Mayhew's Chewbacca performance.
Yes.
There's scenes in this film, especially when he's dealing with Han, and then later when he's dealing with Lando as well is it's difficult to notice unless you've seen the film a lot of times, perhaps because you're so busy focusing on what Harrison Ford is saying. And because there's a bit later on where he's talking about and he's saying it's not my fault, and Chewie just has his head in his hands.
I know. I have noticed that.
And it's
this is a proper actors. Well, I was about to say an actors director. I don't even know that I mean that. I think it's just the attention to detail. It's not just about getting it all down on film. It's not just about the idea. It's about the craft as well.
It's a richer set of performances, I think. Not anything.
Yeah.
No, it's richer. Becca, it is. You don't have to use any limiting language about last week.
Always feel really bad.
Honestly, they
but it's
are.
I tend that's obviously Kenny, being inside R2, controlling, making him move around, and all the rest of it as well. I noticed more of that this time around as well. Not that I didn't notice it last time, or that it was any less previous times. But yeah, it's a lot more. I think these characters who are initially side characters, but have gone on to play huge parts in popular culture. Definitely more nuanced performance this time around, and it's one that you really have to watch and pay attention to notice for it. But yeah, definitely, thanks for noticing it. Bring out Charlie. I'd noticed it this second time around.
Cool.
I mean, going back to Hoth just for a moment, I think it's on the commentary where they say they cut out a lot of the stupid dialogue that could have been here and maybe was in scripts. They were very efficient. Charlie hit on when Han and Luke say goodbye to each other. It can be communicated in looks, providing your actors know what they're doing and providing your director knows what he wants. And clearly in this film, everyone knows what they're doing and what they want.
Absolutely, and yeah, this is when the whole sequence with the asteroid field.
That's not wonderful.
It's breathtaking. And
it's just the music.
Yeah.
Is right. I don't know how to explain this, so I'm going to use an analogy without meaning it like it sounds, even though it's me with my sense of humour. There's something almost sexual about the music, and I don't mean it turns me on or anything. I mean that it has that rhythms of peak and then relaxing afterwards.
Yeah.
Like you get it with sex, frankly. And that's
an interesting analogy.
So for listeners, we all know how Dave likes to have sex. Hard, soft, hard.
I hit you with my rocks, and then you relax and hide in someone's gut.
No, you're right. It's a classic.
There's a sense of a come down after the peak of it. I know what I mean anyway. I suspect Charlie does.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that shot of the Millennium Falcon when it does a loop, and John Williams does this amazing thing with the woodwinds that goes do 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 do, and it's just amazing. But yeah, and again, it's really funny because of the dialogue that's going through. So you've got
no one's in control. That's what makes this film fun. They're all like, "Oh, what the fuck."
3PO spouting about odds in the background, and it's Princess Leia saying, "You don't have to do this to impress me," and stuff like that.
Yeah, because she's just narcissistic enough that she thinks it's all about getting with her. Han is all about showing off because not all the time, but at key moments he thinks he can go watch this, and it never works. You got 3PO who's already planning his sort of beg for mercy.
Shall we just surrender? Maybe the Empire will be.
I know, and going through odds just to convince them how difficult it is. And through all of that, they're acting it perfectly, and you've got a sexual tension between Han and Leia. It's perfect, and the music for it is perfect.
And again, knowing that this was done with layers and layers and layers and layers. Because they had to film pretty much every individual asteroid, and put them.
Yeah, bear in mind it's motion control here, so yeah, they have to do each element separately.
Yeah, so I mean, if I remember correctly, they won again, I don't want to steal any fun facts. They won an Academy Award, a special technical Academy Award for the kind of optical printer they put together for the film.
I think it was for the sound as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were. I think they won a separate one for the sound.
Yeah, best sound. That was the one Oscar. Bugger.
Sorry.
Well, you say that. You say the one Oscar honorary
it won.
awards
Yeah,
wouldn't
lots
be
of
counted.
technical awards as well. So.
Yeah. No, I mean honorary awards wouldn't be counted.
Yeah.
How many awards did like Blake Edwards win? None. But how many times did he come up to the stage to collect an Oscar? One, because he got a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, exactly.
Like an honorary one, yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting, and I've watched people from ILM talk about the film as well, where there's a.
Are you looking it up on IMDb.com?
No,
Yes, because we were typing.
I'm just googling it. There's still a kind of rawness to the effects, even though they're amazing. And then when you look at Return of the Jedi, there it's kind of where the effects in Return of the Jedi are. They're pretty much complete. They know how to do these, and they know how to do them really, really slickly. Whereas in Empire, they're still a bit. They're still a bit. Yeah, they're still a bit kind of raw. And I think again, it kind of works in the kind of favour of the film, where it's kind of because it has these darker edges and what have you. So they won a Special Achievement Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. So I'm guessing around that time, it's maybe because they were always iffy with that kind of thing, where they didn't necessarily have special effects awards until maybe after Star Wars, after these films, because like American Werewolf in London came out the year after, and that won a special award for the makeup because there was no category.
And they had to create a special category all on its own.
Yeah. So they had to give them the kind of special achievement award because back then there was nothing no category that they could really put it in.
Well, it's like they wanted to nominate Frank Oz.
Yeah, George Lucas wanted to.
Yeah, even though Frank Oz, he was obviously very modest, was like, no, I'm not too worried.
Yeah, well, we get that now with Andy Serkis.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I reckon there should definitely be a motion capture award.
Who is in a Star Wars film this year?
Well, this is it. But he'd win.
Well, how many motion captures films do you have though? I mean, it's like, there's maybe like.
Well, no, I think the
three
argument,
if you're lucky.
No, well, the argument is not there should be a motion capture
for your best actor. Yeah.
The argument is that there's enough nuance in the performance. I don't agree because it's not a one-to-one thing. There's animators involved, but I at least see the argument. I think the point is there is an argument to say nominate them for Oscars, but I think the wider point is not just whether you nominate them for Oscars; it's whether they get the recognition they deserve. Yeah. Whether it's Oscars or not. Yeah, personally, on the Oscars, you cannot give, even if you wanted to, Andy Serkis an Oscar for Caesar. I just don't see it. There's animators involved in stuff like that, as much as he might be the reference. But it's still a fair point to say. And by the way, you could disagree with that. I would understand. But you could still say, do people going to see any of the Planet of the Apes films really understand what Andy Serkis is doing for that film? And so certainly are they getting the recognition they deserve? And you could say that you could certainly say that for Frank Oz.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. Because again, with Frank Oz, you've got him, and there was an assistant he had, I think possibly called Katie. But obviously, then you go further. Do you start to count Stuart Freeborn, who was the guy who kind of designed Yoda and built the puppet and all this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, if you want to put in a voice acting one or something like that, then fine. That perhaps that would be part of it. I've no doubt when we look at Caesar, we're sort of looking at Andy Serkis in his eyes and all the rest of it. but it's not a one-to-one relationship. And this conversation's been going on since Gollum, when it wasn't even facial mocap.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, hang on, no, it is animated. They're just looking at images of him. But it's not the same as disrespecting what he did. I'm very respectful of what he did. I just wouldn't give him Best Actor for it because it's not him on the screen. If it was literally... If that previs they did on like Avatar, where you could stand on set and watch an approximation of the digital characters in real time, if that could be the final version, then you'd say, well, the only interface is software, not other people, so maybe. But all the time there are people physically animating it. It's an insult to their... I think it's an insult to their input. To just go, well, Andy Serkis Best Actor. Well, no. What about all the people who turned that into what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that happens in films generally, though. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff that's pulled off really well, and I think that, but they don't necessarily get like the acclaim that they should do. I mean, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I think when it comes to War of the Planet Apes, particularly, I mean, I can see Andy Serkis' performance in that.
Okay.
We're
getting close.
It
might be an argument in 20 years' time, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do think, because I'm not very much like, I'm one of these people who think awards are just like padding shows. Really, they don't really mean anything. Andy Serkis doesn't need an award to tell him how good an actor and how good a work he's done. We all know what good a work he's done. His portfolio shows that anyway. So,
hang on, Chris. If we're debating who should get an Oscar, the validity of giving out Oscars isn't relevant.
Yeah.
I take your point, and we've talked about it on other podcasts and kind of agree. We're not talking about whether the Oscars are a load of old bollocks. We're saying, well, they are given out. Who should get them?
Yeah.
I don't see that. I'm sorry. Frank Oz had his hand up a puppet's arse. and he did.
And did a Miss Piggy voice.
And he did the voice really well. It is vaguely Miss Piggy. It's not identical, but it's close. But there are puppeteers working the ears and the eyes and other things. It isn't just Frank Oz. What Frank Oz did was genius.
This is why Muppet Yoda is so much better than CGI Yoda. I know he can do more, but this is just why it's so much better, because there's more creativity, more skill.
We'll get to you.
More technicality behind it.
I agree, Becca. For me, it's actually, I even though it's just a thing made of rubber, it's still a thing. And I think there's something like tangible about it. That's just like.
And then that's to say, there's actually, I kind of shot myself in the foot though. Basically, obviously there is skill that goes into CGI and coding and the rest of it. I think artistry is amazing.
You are allowed to like call
having
out
something that is tangible
like
that you can
shit,
see and feel, and
Not they're tremendous and they work really hard. If you don't like it, just say it. It's all right.
I just think
an amazing character.
Well, I think Yoda is an inspiration to culture as we know. But I just think I just prefer it. It's a thing, isn't it? It's something you can. Yeah. You can go to a museum and see it.
Yeah, I think there's some sort of thing where like you see CGI, no matter how good it is, you can still tell it's fake. Whereas even though like it's a cheap rubber puppet, as naff as it may be, it's still your brain still tells you that it's real, even though you know it's like it looks fake as shit.
And that makes it more endearing, I think.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of thing, but I think there's something about that and how we perceive that when we see it.
We have a CGI Yoda. You don't have a CGI Chewie, do you? Or
no, all I'm saying is you could talk a lot about how things are not really there and all the rest of it. The fact is,
it's not real.
A puppet isn't a real creature any more than a CGI. It isn't a real creature either.
No.
Some of the time when you're looking at CG, you don't know you're looking at CG. Honestly, there are things I could point you to that you'd go, Christ, that was CG. I didn't know. And I think there's a natural default to like real is better, quote unquote. And that's so self-evidently not true because so much puppetry and work we've seen over the years now looks clunky as shit. And I'm sorry, it does depend on the quality of it, because Mac and Me doesn't look amazing. So I don't hold with that. If Yoda, if we'd had the technology in 1980 that we had in 2005 and we have this year, Yoda would have been CG for the start. It's
motion
not
cap,
less pure.
So they didn't have the technology.
The problem is A, the technology, and B, the idea that it's not just the technology, it's what you want to do with it as well. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with a CG Yoda. What there's fundamentally something wrong with is putting Yoda as CG for all the wrong reasons and at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So it's making him CG in 2002 when the technology's not quite there. So, and actually, when you look back at Gollum in 2002, it doesn't look that good now. But
I
it looks
would argue that he does, but then it's all a matter of perspective.
No, watch it now. I'm talking about now, not your memories. It's not as good as you remember it being.
I will say this. Sorry to jump ahead, but it like in Phantom Menace, like they did a puppet Yoda, and then they redid that CGI, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like it. I mean, I don't know what work they did with the puppet Yoda originally, but that was so much more believable than the CGI one we had in later ones. I mean, my general feeling on this, just to kind of sum up where I am with it, I prefer more practical effects, and I completely agree with Dave that some CGI you would never even know. And I think a little CGI goes a long way. I think the ideal, I mean, apart from maybe like the mocap stuff, which is done in like Andy Serkis has done with Planet of the Apes, but even then that's based on an actual performance, that's something physical. You have to lay the groundwork with something that is actually physically there. So you can use like a puppet and use CGI to fill in the gaps.
But I mean, they scan the puppet anyway.
Yeah,
it's all about how it's rendered.
Yeah,
I didn't particularly think the puppet in Phantom Menace was any good, to be honest with you.
But I'm going off memory, to be honest with you. But I think I'm going from like.
I think again, Dave's right about what they're making him do, because I think the CGI Yoda in the prequels is perfectly fine, apart from the fact that he becomes Sonic the Hedgehog in that bloody lightsaber battle.
Yeah,
because that's the one thing that we all remember, whereas we remember in the original films that he was this wise kind of little dude that kind of was much less.
I guess it was one of those things like, I want to be cool to see Yoda fight, and you see it, you think like, yeah, I'd rather didn't.
Well, it was actually quite exciting first time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
just purely because we hadn't seen it, but it's a joke now. It's awful.
But again, this kind of goes back to George Lucas using the prequels as experiment beds for technology. For him to be able to sell ILM and make ILM the best, and kind of make sure that they're always at the forefront of their game. But Yoda and Dagobah, Dagobah it's a set. How is that a set? It's unbelievable. It was on the set that I can't remember if it was before or after when there was a big fire on the stage for The Shining,
right?
And they used one of the sound stages there, but that whole thing's a set.
Yeah, it looks great. To my eyes, it looks like a set, but it still looks great. I still see it in a that is Dagobah.
My question, Chris, is what are you trying to achieve, right? Because if you're trying to get a fucking Jim will fix it badge for like I did it my fucking self, what does that prove? I mean, if you make a set and you go, well, like, that's clearly a set and it looks a bit shit, but what artistry went into it against, well, it's CG, what a lazy fucking conceit, but it looks seamless.
Oh, okay.
I don't hope with it. I'm really sorry. I went to watch Dunkirk this summer, which would have been a better film if he'd used some fucking more CG in it. Because it had no scale. 400,000 people on the beach and it looked like 200 people and some pigeons. It was fucking rubbish on that basis. There is nothing inherently wrong with CG.
No.
Do I wish Yoda was still a puppet? Yes, for consistency. For sheer consistency. But if Yoda had always been CG because we had the technology 30 years ago, then so fucking what?
Yeah.
But because by 2005, he kind of looked all right anyway. He just didn't look quite like the puppet, and that's not good.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, that is the reality of it. Really, it's. I think you're right in terms of its consistency. It's like we see Yoda like here in 1980, and it's like, okay, well, this is Yoda now, and now the transition from CGI Yoda, it just doesn't look right. But then we'll get into the Clone Wars and all that crap later. But yeah, this is to go back to Yoda as a character. It's great. I mean, it's weird seeing how he's first introduced, and he kind of like he's playing not the typical Yoda that we know. He's playing like a kind of like a little bit of like a random nuisance.
Yeah, he's like your crotchety old man, your kind of old hermit who lives in the undergrowth. Well,
basically, Yoda comes like we're used to him being like this, like kind of like wise old leader, and he's kind of like performing as this kind of like weird sort of nuisance, almost like he's like just pissing Luke off deliberately. It's kind of like a weird thing, because I'm used to seeing Yoda from Jedi, so rewatching this what would have been a few years ago was a bit of like, oh crap, this is Yoda's first introduction as a kind of like as a cranky, weird, kooky little creature at first.
Yeah, I mean it's clearly a test.
Yeah.
To get Luke, to kind of gauge how Luke is being, and also against the audience as well, and our kind of how we usually see main characters.
It's our perception of things, because it like in our heads when we think, oh, the Grand Jedi Master Yoda, we're thinking of someone who's going to be similar like Obi-Wan or something like that. So we're not expecting like this little green like. Yeah, and I think it's like sends a message like, well, no, the Force is not just it's not just like, a bunch of white guys or it's not just like this typical sort of thing. It can be any alien life form. It's not just exclusive to humans.
And it's the fact that so many before this the kind of everyone you had the Muppets, so you had all puppets like this, and there were, to my knowledge, no films with puppets in such a serious big speaking role as this, and it's just amazing where he's in his hut with Luke, and Luke's kind of getting angry at not seeing Yoda, and then he just turns and speaks to Obi-Wan, and just the way his character turns and saying, I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience. And it's just such an amazing moment to properly give him a real introduction to who he is. And then to see Luke realise who he is. And it's just astonishing. And how well written that character is as well.
I mean, I think it's a wonderful sequence. Obviously, the one thing that always gets pointed out with this is how quickly Luke must get trained. Because Luke is there getting trained by Yoda while Han is going through the whole thing in the asteroid field, and they're heading for Cloud City. And his training, it appears to be nearly done by the time they get to Cloud City, and there's no indication that takes months or years. But no film. I say
time does appear to kind of
no film's perfect.
Pass quickly by that. But,
people have tried to explain it. My attitude is just no film's perfect.
I never thought that his training was nearly done. I always thought there was a lot of work to be done, and he's dashing off because I have to save my friends, which is kind of like the crucial thing. It's like, no, you're not ready, and
nothing more can I teach you.
Is that line dialogue?
I don't
Yeah,
know
but
if it's an actual line of dialogue, but
Oh,
that's
okay,
the
well,
gist.
that blows my-
That's what he says in Jedi.
Yeah, okay.
So, but I guess that's looking at what he did when he went off to Vader and did all that and faced Vader.
It still does
survived.
appear he does the huge bulk of Jedi training in an afternoon.
Yeah, but you got to think as well that the Millennium Falcon doesn't have hyperdrive.
Right.
So,
The thing is, you could.
but again,
love-
you don't need to explain it.
No, you can love this film and still accept that's probably a flaw.
Yeah, I mean, I just accept that he's learned the swift basics of Jedi training, and it's like Yoda really wants him to stay and perfect it, and try and train, but he wants to dash off and save his mates, which I think is kind of like where the actual dilemma of the film comes from. Which with part of the film I really like.
Because he's too eager to get out there and do it, and he's not patient, and that's why he's saying, "No, he can't train him," and he's not ready yet.
It's like, oh, it's unclear, they're in danger. It's like, yeah, but you don't know whether like you going off will save them anyway. It's
Sorry, George Lucas could always go back and put different colour clothes on in each sequence.
Well, he kind of does in one place. We'll get to.
But it's kind of the way it's cut into kind of these different trials or tests, as it was. So you have the first one with the cave, and then you have the one with his ship.
Now, the cave doesn't fully make sense to me, but it is wonderfully atmospheric.
I'd read the cave bit as like it's kind of like his true enemy is himself. That kind of
I
thing.
understand. No, hang on. Let me explain that better then. I know what the scene's trying to tell me. I know what the scene's trying to tell Luke, and I know what Yoda's trying to teach Luke. I don't quite understand why on some random planet there's like a dark side coven that can read Luke's mind and like create this.
Yeah.
So that's the bit I don't.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
I don't think it massively matters. None of these things I'm coming up with are big problems.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's just like the Force and stuff. I mean, you could say it's Yoda using the Force to put these stuff in his head, almost. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I always thought it was something Yoda had set up somehow. Because it just thinking about that Yoda would have been waiting for this eventuality. But again, it's something that if you're going into it, you might as well just write a book about it. And I imagine someone probably has somewhere called "How the Dark Side Cave Was Made."
Yeah.
But the way it's done and the kind of
if
slow
we explained
motion,
everything, we'd go into midichlorians, wouldn't we? And then no one would really want that.
Yeah. It's just and again, it's kind of the kind of much more kind of mythic way this film tries to present things. And then in between that, you've got the hiding in the asteroid field, or inside an actual asteroid, and smooching.
Yeah, they finally get it on.
And
then 3PO, the cop blocker.
Excuse me. Oh.
Again, it's just some of these lines are so funny. And when it kind of it shakes, when the Falcon shakes and he catches Leia in his arms, and then she's like, "Get off me," and he's like, "Shh, wait," and he says, "Don't get excited," and she says, "Being held by you isn't quite enough to be excited. Excite me," and he says, "Sorry, sweetheart, I haven't got time for anything else." It's hilarious, and then.
It's a great line, isn't it? I just think, being in your arms is not enough to excite me. It's like,
Where do we go from there then? So Luke has done his training, and he's.
Well, we kind of like we've on the planet. Luke kind of does all the training stuff. We integrate that between when they're on the asteroid and they find out they're actually in a mouth or something.
Yeah,
and then they fly out. Then they decept like a Star Destroyer and kind of like trick it into actually landing on it and hiding in plain sight, which is where that general gets choked out again.
Yeah, and we meet the Emperor as well.
Oh yes.
Now these are two different scenes in two different versions. What are the differences, Charlie?
Okay, so in the original film, what they did is they got a lady. I think it might be Rick Baker's wife, but I'm not 100% sure.
It was one of the crew's wives.
Yeah, Eileen Baker, her name was. So I think it might be.
Oh.
And what they did is they projected into her eyes the eyes of a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
This is so weird.
And then voiced by Clive Rebel.
Yeah. Who I think was I only kind of knew him. Apart from that, was for I think I later found out that he was in an episode of TNG. I think.
Oh right. Okay.
But but it had and he had a very different voice to what the Emperor eventually had in Return of the Jedi. And then when they redid it in 2004, and they got Ian McDiarmid back, presumably while he was still doing Revenge of the Sith.
He looks like he did in Revenge of the Sith.
He does, yeah.
Rubbery.
Well, makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's kind of like, the voice was kind of like a lot more direct and forward. But I noticed
there was as Guy of Gisborne.
Was what?
All right, really?
His Star Trek: The Next Generation episode was a Q1 that was based on Robin Hood.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Like Guy of Gisborne.
I never knew that.
But was it Marjorie Eaton? Was it who did the face of the Emperor originally? Fun fact, folks. Yeah, they kind of had. Well, she kind of had like a smirk that Ian McDiarmid carried on. Like, so there was kind of very flat, kind of like stern, but then at the end, kind of gives like a kind of like little sort of smirk, which I don't know whether that was a direction of Lucas or any of the filmmakers, or that was just something they just liked and picked up. But yeah, I thought I don't know about that, but
yeah, but yeah, his voice was kind of a bit more kind of less.
Fire.
There is a great disturbance in the Force, whereas the other was like, there is a great disturbance in the Force. Much more. He's much more evil in there. But yeah, there was the kind of weird dialogue where they kind of just make it. They mention Anakin Skywalker by name, whereas before it's just like the son of Skywalker, and kind of,
which immediately sounds distancing. It sounds like you're talking about somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I do wonder whether they actually. It does make me wonder whether the filmmakers actually couldn't decide whether Emperor actually knew that Vader was.
I think that's exactly right, because I mean, a bit later on we'll have Yoda say a line, and we'll get to it when we get there, that sounds authoritative, but I know they didn't know at the time. But then there's later in the film where it sounds like they do. So I think it's an embryonic idea at this point. Not Luke being... Sorry, I didn't mean the Luke and Vader thing. I mean the Leia being the sister thing. I think that's embryonic at this point. They're still figuring details out as they go along.
Well, as far as I know, that wasn't until Jedi. That didn't come up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're going to get to a couple of points later on where it's implied in one place from what we know, but wasn't actually an implication.
Yeah.
And then but then there's something that does imply it. So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So where from here?
So he from there on, you've got another pivotal scene with Luke, and again, Luke fails. And you kind of really kind of
isn't that where we first hear Yoda's theme properly?
Well, I think it's where you first hear it in its kind of full. No, actually, I think that's. I'm trying to think that's probably the scene where he finally reveals himself, and I feel really bad that I can't confirm that. But you hear it in a really grand version, And there's also a really lovely version of the Force theme as well, when he kind of goes on his speech. So Luke's very much, again, Luke's kind of, the ship goes down and it's like, we'll never get it out now. And he's a bit kind of snide about the size. And then Yoda gives this amazing speech where he says, "For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Between here, you, the rock, yes, even the ship." And then does it. And then it's
no
that
different, only different in your mind.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then it's that fun thing where Luke says, "I don't believe it," and he says, "That is why you fail." And considering Luke is the hero of the story, to have him.
There's a couple of things to note here. I mean, firstly, the bravery of doing this with the hero of the story. But secondly, there's a lot of knocking Mark Hamill, but his call sheet every day was just him. And it was him and Frank Olsen, a puppet, and that was it for weeks. And he had to act opposite this inanimate object for months. Still a relatively young man with relatively little experience. I think that's impressive.
Yeah, and I think it really shows. I think he's really good in this, and I think it shows that there's a kind of what he had in the first one, where he had this kind of naivety, is still kind of there while he's trying to push himself forward. So it's where he almost starts to think that he's done it already.
I think what the film is doing, I think what is it's successful in doing is it's setting up this idea that we, the audience, see Luke isn't ready. Luke is severely not ready. He's not skilled in comparison to Vader. So when he dashes off to save his friends, we're like, yeah, Luke, you're going to get your ass handed to you, because Vader's ready and he's on point and you're not. So it kind of like puts raises the stakes to an increasing level. If Luke was like kind of like in a montage Rocky sequence where he's just like lifting X-wings left, right, and centre, then it wouldn't have the same effect. We'd be like, oh my god, Luke's pumped now. He's going to kick Vader's ass. Yeah, it wouldn't have the same level of like tension of like we wouldn't be less like edgy about it. We'd be like, oh.
Well, he sets off with a natural edginess in our minds. He's like, I'm not sure this is a good idea. Somebody who knows way better than any of us, because they've solved that mentor anger. Angle, sorry. Somebody way, way smarter than any of us has gone, this is really bad news. Yeah,
but you kind of buy why... Well, I understand why Luke feels like he has to, regardless. It's like he knows...
Well, the key line is... I don't know if we've got to them being captured at Cloud City yet. But
not yet,
no.
That's what he's responding to. So obviously we're doing this slightly out of sequence. But there's a bit where Solo is clearly being tortured.
Yeah.
And when he's returned to like the fucking holding pen and dumped to the floor, he says they didn't even ask me anything.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit about knowing anything. They are literally trying to just like cause a disturbance in the Force to draw Luke in. That's all it is, and Yoda knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, So as soon as he's done his ship raising thing, that's when you cut back and they see the Imperial fleet go to light speed, and then they go off with all the garbage that comes out, which is a great touch, and go off to Cloud City.
It's scored nicely as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
then, but you see Boba Fett.
Well, I'm no score expert, but I do kind of think here it might be the best example of the series that I could think of Williams finding the pace of each scene in what he's scoring. Just finds the pace perfectly each time.
it is just inch perfect, and there's so many great moments in. It's like when you have the when they get to Cloud City, and they're going through all the clouds. You hear this kind of female choir, and it's very much like sirens, as in the kind of
P.S. Yeah, sirens as in the Odyssey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
when I went P.S., I was thinking of sirens from the first episode of Red Dwarf 6.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
But it's based on the same thing.
Yeah.
In the Odyssey, Homer
Simpson?
Homer Simpson. Odysseus.
No.
Odysseus. Sorry, I'm thinking Homer wrote it. Odysseus heard the song of the sirens, but had to be sort of tethered to a post, and all his sort of crew had to wear like wax in their ears because their song was so beautiful you would never leave.
Yeah.
And it's that idea of like the irresistible call. That's what sirens represent.
Yeah.
And kind of just there's that, then it lands, and there's Lando comes out, and there's the kind of little moment when you're not sure exactly what's going to happen, especially again because this is the great way that Star Wars, especially in this film, fills out little backstories without kind of going into exposition. It's like when Han and Leia have the fight at the beginning, the argument in the tunnel, and he says, says the bounty hunters, we ran into an odd man, and I'll change my mind. And so you've got that image of people chasing him and that kind of thing, just from that single line. And then when they're going to Cloud City, it's like, I thought you knew this person. And then Chewie growls and he says, that was a long time ago. I'm sure he's forgotten about that. And again, it's a really funny moment, but it tells you something. And it kind of clues you in, so you're not sure. So when in that opening moment, when you're not sure what they're going to do, and they make a stance to fight.
I love that. I'm sure we'll get way too much of that in the backstory, but
yeah,
the whole language of it is what a bunch of lads.
Yeah,
you know,
scoundrels.
The Chinese are a great bunch of lads.
These scoundrels, I like him.
Yeah, it's just like it was probably a lot of fun. It was probably a bit heated, and it was probably really, really irresponsible. Whatever it's that happened.
Yeah, and so you've got them having this little tour and being led through, and then 3PO ends up in this room after being sworn at by a droid. Again, that's it's just a bit where he sees an identical droid.
Well, he hears what sounds like R2, doesn't he? And goes like, "Oh,
yeah."
R2.
Well, it's just before that when the droid comes out of the
yes, of course, yeah,
comes out of the door and he goes Ichuta, and he goes how rude, and that's like that sounds like an R2 unit.
So was that Boba Fett, or was that Stormtroopers?
I think it's just a Stormtrooper. I think, yeah. I think that's too low work for Boba Fett, I think. And then you cut back to Luke, who by now has kind of seen in the Force and has made his decision that he has to go and rescue them. And there's again, this is like talking about Mark Hamill's acting. There's a moment where he's kind of putting all his stuff back in his X-wing, and he picks up a snake in one of the engine bits of the X-wing, and it bites him, and he doesn't flinch. And it's like the bit in Raiders of the Lost Ark when he swallows the fly.
Oh yeah.
It's just a really
I
great
never noticed
moment.
that bit before, actually.
But that whole sequence I love, with Obi-Wan and Yoda telling him.
I was going to say Obi-Wan turning up. Whatever wig they put on him this time is way more obvious than the one he wore in A New Hope, even though it's the same design. I like this because we weren't expecting it. Again, think of a 1980s audience.
So it'd be like anything they've ever seen before.
I know, and they hear rumours maybe Alec Guinness is in this, and it's like, well, he's dead, isn't he? And then he turns up looking like a Ready Breck ad.
I don't like that Force Ghost effect.
I love it. I do. I quite like it. I've got no problem with it. I'm just parodying what it kind of looks a bit like. It doesn't. Ready Break adverts are from the early 80s on the TV budget. They look nowhere near this good, but it would have been odd at the time, and it's a nod to the universe that's been created and the filmmakers that they make it feel natural within a minute or two. Before this scene finishes, you're perfectly happy that Mark Hamill's talking to a puppet and a ghost.
Mm.
The stakes are made very clear to him, probably almost too clear. Maybe they're slightly overstated.
Well, it's interesting because...
But it sets up a very nerve-wracking third act.
There's the bit where Yoda's just resigned to let him go. So he starts to kind of actually give him advice, which is really good because kind of like you expect in a lot of those things that he goes off against their wishes and what have you. But the fact that he turns around and kind of strong as Vader, mind what you have learned, save you it can. It's a great little touch. And again, the kind of character Yoda is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then,
but the thing is as well, there's a line here where he says, that boy is our last hope.
Yeah.
And Yoda replies, no, there is another. And with what we know of what comes later, we assume they're saying Leia. Actually, what George Lucas has said and others have said is that it was just to put in your mind that Luke could die. If he's not our last hope, then he could die and they could focus on another one. That's all it is. They don't appear to know it's Leia at this stage. Particularly bearing in mind we've made nothing of it, but Luke and Leia had a little snog earlier in the film.
Yeah.
And Luke
I do love the look on Luke's
evidently
face, though.
would have knocked one out to that. He looks very, very pleased with himself right after.
Where was his force sensitivity on that one? Like
that's got the spank.
I mean, at this point, they were still talking about it being 9 parts. Obviously, that's come to fruition now, but back then, this was still kind of there's still to be 9 parts to the whole thing, and the Emperor wasn't going to be in it until like episode 9 or something like that. Obviously, one of the massive fallouts of this film and the fact it went over budget and things like that was the loss of Gary Kurtz.
Well, they fell out as well in the next one with the whole teddy bear thing, and Han not dying and lots of things. Kurtz saw it a different way. He saw this a lot more artistically pure and hardcore. He felt Lucas was compromising a lot for commerce and all that kind of stuff.
What? Lucas? Compromise? Nah.
Never.
Yeah.
Which was like the real kind of antithesis of Lucas at this time. You get to see Chewie, and they play Piggy in the middle with him with 3PO's head. The Ugnaughts.
Not the best thing,
and,
is it?
It's just funny.
It's funny. There are moments of levity in this film, but it's either few and far between, but this is one of them. It's really good.
Ridiculous. And then he comes back, and again, it's just before he comes in, there's a really nice moment where Han and Leia are chatting, and they're talking about Han's future, but they're not talking about it. And then there's a line where he says, as soon as the Falcon's done, we'll soon be gone. And then she says, and then you're as good as gone, aren't you? And then he kind of looks at her and takes her hands, and it's a really interesting moment, again, showing that there's not a set future.
There's kind of a touch to the last film as well, with the idea that he just thinks about himself and he'll just leave at the available opportunity, and she's kind of like almost like saying you're still that same old guy, aren't you? You'll just drop a hat, really. I think there's an element to that as well.
Yeah. And then they meet Darth Vader.
Yeah, I mean, we're not really talking about Lando much, but he's kind of set up as like, he's the friendly guy. He hits on Leia.
Yeah.
As soon as he sees her, which I don't know whether that's half because that's just who he is. He's like just hitting on people, or whether that's partly of his banter with Han, like they just always kind of like try and compete for what each other have.
I think he probably is just like that anyway.
Yeah.
And then again, it's that kind of moment where he's giving his speech about.
I've just made a deal to make sure the Empire don't.
Yeah, and it's such a great moment that you only kind of suspect at the last moment, and you see Chewie knows something is up.
Yeah.
The animals are always the first to know.
I think the timing is right, because you hear it, you think, hang on, that sounds like whoosh, you know?
Yeah, and then you've got Darth Vader and Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And then they got on, like Dave said, to start torturing Han, to get Luke, to bait Luke. And Lando admits it as much, because Vader's not subtle about it at all.
Yeah.
What do you make of this, Becca?
I think, for me, it's one of the high points in the film, personally speaking.
I mean, it is that pivotal moment where, I mean, you always think of, like, I think in most films, at some point, it's like the turning point of the third act. So, you know, we get to kind of close off the film, and at that point, usually, everything is at its lowest. It's like the darkest time in the film where, like, the good guy is seemingly defeated or always lost.
It's known as the point of no return.
Almost, and now the hero has to.
Yeah, you have to overcome that obstacle to turn things around, and you can't.
Or someone say like the story of the film changes, you know. So the many examples, but if you like look at the last act of the film, the actual plot, the film changes to like what the type of story it is to something else, to kind of like resolve the rest of the film. So for me, I kind of like look at it as that way, as this is like the turning point in the film. But yeah, go on. Sorry to cut you off, Becca.
No, that's fine.
I think a really interesting point as well, that again that kind of is kind of gruesome, but I kind of again shows how callous Vader is, but how kind of single-minded in what he's doing is he doesn't stick around to torture Han himself. He comes out and starts talking to Boba Fett, while you hear Han screaming in the background. And it's just a real kind of moment where, and then Vader kind of changes the deal with Lando.
Oh, the change of Boba Fett voice.
Oh dear, dearie.
It's it's a result that suffers from
retrofitting.
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna ask Charlie what he thinks of Boba Fett. I mean, do you think fans have kind of ruined Boba Fett? Like, in terms of like how they perceive it, in terms of like fans' perception, and so Lucas felt like he had to kind of like add more in the prequels, and it's kind of ruined it. Or do you?
No, I think George Lucas ruined Boba Fett. He's always been a character. I mean, I love him to bits, and I always have. He's always been a bit of a divisive character, but and he's had kind of so much kind of written about him in like when they had like the expanded universe and things like that, where he kind of survives and things like that. And so I think there was an element that when Attack of the Clones came round and there was the response to the Phantom Menace, I think there's very clear moments in that film where Lucas has gone, okay, we need to kind of try and get the fans back. So what can I do? I'll put Boba Fett in there. What am I going to do? I'm going to make him a little kid that hangs around with his dad.
Little kid, that's his fucking problem.
And
little kid. That's
well, basically got a little kid with basically Boba Fett. Like Jango Fett is basically Boba Fett.
Yes, he is. Of course, he is. Just slightly shinier.
Yeah. So then they have to change, and then this because of the continuity, we have to change his voice, and it's shit. I've got nothing against Timur Morrison, the guy who does the voices for all the clones and was Jango Fett. He's normally a pretty decent actor, but again, he's probably under George Lucas's direction. And
I think it's the fact that the original voice is really kind of creepy, and his isn't, and it's assuming that you will sound exactly like your father. I know it's a clone of, but if you're brought up somewhere completely different from me, you'll sound different from me, even if we're twins.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work.
But also, wouldn't that mean every single stormtrooper would have to sound like him as well now?
Well, going forward, no, because they're not clones later on.
Right, okay.
But certainly in the prequel years, yes. But they do. It's not so much whether it's historically accurate and everything else. It's more the fact that when it was Jeremy Bulloch, he's worth a lot to me, is really kind of unnerving.
But it wasn't actually Jeremy Bulloch's voice.
No, sorry.
It was a guy called Jason Wingreen.
Yeah.
That was the thing. It was so menacing. And again, Boba Fett was kind of built up as this really kind of menacing, great character. A, because of how fucking cool he looked, and also because of that voice.
So was that kind of like how? What I kind of wonder is what was it about Boba Fett that put the spark in fans' imagination? Because obviously, I think to George Lucas himself, it was just like a henchman character who didn't really. So I think he kind of underestimated. I think it was like he made this kind of henchman character that fans really really drawn to, and took a life to their own. So when he got killed off in the next film in the manner that he does, Lucas didn't think, well, that doesn't really matter that much because he's not that. That character is not necessarily that important, but fans were like really disappointed.
Yeah. I think it's maybe because he's one of the few characters in the film that doesn't cower from Vader, and because there's the bit where when they're torturing Han Solo, Vader comes out and says, "You take Captain Solo to Jabba after I was Skywalker," and he goes, "He's no good to me, dead." And it's the way he talks back to Darth Vader. In a film where we've seen people, half a dozen people seemingly choked by Darth Vader for doing.
He's the only character that does that, really, doesn't he? He didn't see anybody else.
I guess I think you're right. I mean, I never thought of it like that. That I would say that it's probably more the case of Jabba, in terms of like Jabba the Hutt's kind of a law onto himself, because he gets like a bunch of bounty hunters, including Boba Fett. They don't seem to count from Vader either. Though I will add, I think it's kind of funny that scene where like, they got a bunch of bounty hunters to find Han Solo. Then it's like, right, go and find him. Oh, look, there he is. I thought that was kind of funny, but
but I mean that's the thing. Vader got them all together, so he obviously knows Boba Fett's reputation.
Yeah,
and their reputation.
No disintegration.
Because thinking how many bounty hunters there must be in that universe, and they've already talked about them previously in the opening, so it's kind of establishing that.
I must say, I was a little bit disappointed how we didn't have like a huge bounty hunter hunt on Han Solo. Like there could have been a really cool film there somewhere where it was
kind of set up for that because there were several of them.
Yeah, I would have liked to see where they like sort of like or like try like to capture him and they all get picked off one by one. I would have loved to see that film, and it was just like the end. It was always like Boba Fett that gets him, but
I guess that's the thing because they wanted to follow him.
Yeah,
and he so he was obviously set up from the beginning to be the number one bounty hunter, and he's got an interesting kind of because of his costume as well. It's kind of. It looks kind of like it's kind of put together from other things, and there's like bits like he's got like braids that kind of look like they're kind of hairs from Wookiees and things like that. And it's kind of, I mean, that's another thing that Star Wars amazingly does, even in the prequels, is tell story through costume and through the production design, and kind of so you have these ideas. About these people, it's like Han Solo. You look at Han Solo and you immediately see the gunslinger from 1,000 Western films with these tiny little futuristic touches. And Boba Fett's kind of the same. And he was just kind of, again, a cool guy.
Or a decent bloke.
And didn't take any shit from Darth Vader, which no one else did.
Well, he's a law unto himself. Well, a law of Jabba's, I guess. But it kind of like... He doesn't have to take orders from Vader, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We don't know. We don't know his relationship with Jabba the Hutt, and it's never really made clear, to be honest with you. The only thing that's really said is it's known that Jabba the Hutt. We know that from the first film that Jabba the Hutt has a bounty on Han's head, and then going from that, saying you can take Captain Snow to Jabba the Hutt, just inferring that that's what he's going to do, and it's a nice byproduct of Vader trying to find Luke and trying to trap Luke. Which then he goes says, okay, we'll put him in carbon freeze, and then we have to test it on Captain Solo in case it kills it, which is a really kind of a really neat way to have a little mini emotional climax before the end of the film with putting Han in carbonite. And again, it's an amazing scene.
You know, it only really hit me like why he says I know, and it's kind of almost like in the same vein of what their relationship's been like to this point of like them always kind of teasing each other, like being almost like being at each other's throats. He's always been like kind of, come on, you can't get enough of me, you know. So it's almost like he says it. The line I know is like how he would say it if he was joking, but how he says it is kind of dead stern and serious, as if you're saying, I love you too. So I think that's kind of it's a nice little niche of a character trait that actually made complete sense to me for the first time. I don't know what you guys thought of it, but
yeah, it's the whole male thing as well as not being able to say I love you back. And it's kind of plays into his character. But yeah, it's the thing behind that as well. Like you said, that it just makes it work so well.
Definitely, I like if it's by any other character, or certainly by somebody else, or say if Harrison Ford hadn't played that role, I don't think it would have been as iconic an exchange as it is now. I think because you have that character, you have that backstory, and because it's Harrison Ford, it works completely. And the same as if it was any other character. I don't know, Mark Hamill saying it wouldn't feel the same.
Yeah, exactly, because it's the way that Han's character has already been established.
Yeah, you know that he's, full of himself. I was going to quote Bondham, but it's not relevant. But it's because you have that character, and because it's Harrison Ford, I do think it is. It's just classic, isn't it? It's like you see it on Valentine's Day cards, and it's just like, oh.
Do you?
So it's lovely.
Yeah, all the time. I've got a pendant, and my wife has as well. I bought her for anniversary.
You got one half, and she's got the other.
One half says "I love you," and the other half says "I know."
Oh, I love it. It's so warm and fuzzy. That's like the best thing ever.
Yeah, and it's become an iconic thing for kind of geek love.
Exactly. No, it's a great line. It's a great line.
What they do dramatically to these characters in the sequel to kind of the biggest film of all time, it's just astonishing, and it's kind of expected now, but you think back then as well, it's like, okay, so right, we're going to freeze the biggest star of the film. They
tease you with it as well. They kind of tease you as if to say like, we can save him. We can, they can sort of like just get the shit, and then they get there just as it flies off. It's like, oh.
And then Luke shows up.
Yeah.
And and from that moment, it's so good. The whole duel, and it shits over anything in the prequels.
Absolutely agreed. I can make a case for next week, but we'll get there. But there's certain elements to next week, but it's about telling a story, and the prequels don't do that. Yeah. Look how many flips we could do. This is brilliant.
And again, it's the way Vader, like Luke goes right up to him, and Vader hits him right away, and he goes down, and it's setting the stakes from there on. This is not going to be an easy fight. And the way Vader uses one arm, just uses his lightsaber with one hand.
That's the other thing. It really contrasts with next week, because next week is almost the mirror opposite.
Yeah.
Vader is absolutely trying his best next week. This week, not so much.
Yeah, he's just kind of playing with his food almost. I mean, my favourite bit where he sort of knocks Luke into the carbonite thing, he goes like all too easy.
yeah. There's kind of the real kind of arrogance there, and then you kind of see it change a little bit over the duel. But when he kind of goes into that room, and then he starts throwing things at him with the Force, and it looks so painful because you see Luke just missing, trying to hit him out of the way.
Oh, he's almost dazed by it and bruised.
And there's things battering him in the back.
You really feel like the pain in that scene, don't you? You kind of feel like he's really getting knocked around and he's actually getting real injuries.
Yeah,
and he really does take a beating.
And there's a it's really nice the way that scene goes, and then he kind of knocks the big thing and it smashes the window, and then kind of sucks Luke out of it, and it goes from that scene to them escaping from Cloud City, which is a bit more of an uplifting scene, but again really funny because you have Lando rescuing them, and then Chewie tries to choke it. And then where R2 meets back up with 3PO.
I find that scene a bit silly, to be honest. I think it kind of breaks the tone a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it's fine, but for me, it kind of breaks it a little bit. But oh well, to each their own.
I think it's to me, there's a lot of it's kind of, especially since R2 is such an unsung hero in the films, sort of, but at least from the in-film perspective. And there's the bit where he says, R2, you can plug in and override the system. And he plugs in and he says, how was I supposed to know it was a power terminal? And then when he does it again later, and he says, we don't need to know about the Millennium Falcon's hyper drive, it's fixed. And again, his 3PO's arrogance and his kind of brashness against R2, which telling him that, and then finding out later on that it isn't fixed and that it's been deactivated. Again, it's a really funny moment that pays off later. And then there's the moment where R2 does open the door, and he sprays all that stuff out, all the fog or whatever, to the stormtroopers, and then you see him kind of triumphantly rolling out. And it's just a great kind of little moment because it's a breather from that fight. And then when you go back to the fight again, Vader is just on one.
Oh, fair enough.
And just goes absolutely crazy at Luke. And again, it's totally mirrored in next week's, because it's the way he just goes on and on and on and on, and then it ends with him cutting his hand off. And again, how many films do you see where the hero's hand is cut off?
Yeah,
only in Star Wars, really.
It's probably not your typical hero in this respect.
Yeah.
It's like following that traditional heroic arc, and that I would call it heroic storyline. Because there are only like 7 stories that you can tell.
Yeah, the hero's journey thing.
Hero's journey, that's the one. Thank you.
I'll be surprised if we don't see that happen in Last Jedi as well.
Oh, I imagine so. It does in every.
Spoiler alert! Where he gets a hand chopped off.
I'm thinking possibly more of Rilo. Or is it what he said? Rilo Ken then.
Adam Driver.
Adam Driver. Yeah.
Rilo Ken. That's his.
Rilo Ken. Yeah.
That's his good.
Ken Barlow.
Snowden.
And then he says, I am your father.
Which apparently was kept from David Prowse. I mean, he was like, he was dead annoyed because like I thought,
a famous leaker.
Yes.
Yeah, they told him not to look at the script.
Well, no, they just said something different. It said Obi-Wan is your father.
Yeah, and they only told Mark Hamill on the set, like before they were about to do it. They just took him aside and said, he's going to say
This is
Obi-Wan's killed your father.
He's actually saying.
But, yeah. But I mean, it's he saying, I am your father.
We can never recapture how that must have felt at the time to watch this.
No.
That's really sad. I wish I could.
Because given how dark this, I mean, like we set up with Vader as the big bad next week, so we said, okay, he's like kind of the evil Jedi that has to be defeated. And this week they go hard, and he's choking everyone left, right, and centre. He's determined. He's a lot harsher in this. And then for turn around and say, "Oh, actually, no, I'm your father. I'm your daddy."
Yeah,
it is like a what the fuck.
The thing is as well, because he does all the no thing, but after that he kind of immediately accepts it.
Yeah, search your feelings. You know it's to be true. And he's like,
and he's kind of saying, "Ben, why didn't you tell me?"
Yeah.
And it's
as he leaps away from it, or falls away from it. It's only the 97 special edition that stuck the scream on it. Actually, strangely stuck the Emperor's scream on from.
Yeah, that was fucking awful.
Pointless, because why would he scream? He's doing this by choice. And it's supposed to suggest he's getting stronger with the Force, and getting stronger with the Force implies a certain inner peace.
Yeah, I mean, there was originally they shot, I don't know if it was just like an alternate kind of scene, but they shot it where he leapt, and then Vader grabbed him with the Force and held him up, and then dropped him.
Right.
Obviously, didn't you? But in one of the early trailers, you can see Vader in that pose with his fist, and then you can see him use the Force with it.
Oh yeah, like with lightsaber in one hand and use his hand outstretched.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course that's used all the time, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, again, it's the great thing that I get about Luke is that he falls. He decides that he's happy to sacrifice himself.
Yes, exactly. That's the point. That's why you don't have him scream.
Yeah.
Also, you get in the fact that Vader's also deliberately sabotaged the hyperdrive on the Falcon, so he goes, "All right, fine, well, and I'm not getting away."
Yeah.
Yes, that would be exactly it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he ends up going down a little tunnel and another tunnel, and then hanging on, essentially, well, some kind of weather vane type thing.
That's only as he knows he's going to move. Now, this is the only other thing where I'm not quite sure what George and Kirsch were going for here, in that there was a hint earlier at Leia, but we know they didn't know it was Leia, and yet he uses the Force to speak to Leia here. Is that just trying to tell us he's Force sensitive or remind us, or is that a hint? It can't be a hint if they don't know.
No, I think that's him. That's mention it to him. Okay. Yeah.
It might have been an idea that they hadn't decided on, but they could spin it off either way, that it's solely him, or it could, you could play either way, but...
Yeah, I mean, it is a nice... I mean, if that had been the case, that would have been a nice hint. But, I mean, I think it's building on from when he was doing his training from Yoda, when he originally saw the kind of visions, where he says, through the Force things you will see other places, the future, the past, old friends long gone. So I think it may be just kind of building from that. But again, Chewbacca, because she says, we've got to go back. And he's like, what? She says, I know where Luke is. And he's in the background, and she's ignoring him, Lando completely. And Chewie's like, Arr! And then she says, Chewie, just do it. And then Lando says, but what about these fighters? And he just growls at Lando so fiercely.
It's really quite strong, because like I mean, I don't think I did this time, but I've been known to... It's not one of those where you'll jump 10 feet in the air. It's one where you'll suddenly shudder slightly in your seat.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's quite scary. You think, oh.
And then they rescue Luke. And again, stupid fucking special edition. The pointless Vader going to a shuttle.
I know, yeah, just pointless.
Just fill in the gap, I think. That's what
Well, there wasn't a gap, that's the point.
Yeah,
no, exactly. There's no gap to fill.
It ruins the tension. Because you're cutting from the TIE fighters chasing the Millennium Falcon to just these shots of the shuttle, and then it was an outtake of Return of the Jedi where he gets...
It's better when you don't know where he is, because he could turn up at any time. If
Exactly.
you watch
It's
him go
scarier.
into his ship, you're going like, well, no panic.
There he is.
It's not even at his ship yet.
I always kind of liked and it didn't annoy me that as much, but in Rogue One you saw it as well at the end when he went and he boarded the ship, and you saw the same shuttle. But I always kind of liked that it was Return of the Jedi. It was like a ship from that film.
Yeah.
And then when you kind of saw it popping up on other places, but as well, and apparently they used a line that was cut out of Star Wars, where because. And again, it fucks up things in a number of different ways. Because Vader's voice is pretty different in Empire than it is in Star Wars. So you see him just go to walk out of the walkway, and you can tell he's really, really pissed that Luke's gone. And he just says, "Bring my shuttle." And then it cuts from there. And then in the new one, it says, "Alert my Star Destroyer to prepare for my arrival." And it's an awkward line anyway. And then there's a horrible CG shot of him walking out to the shuttle on the landing pad.
It's more irritating because it's just like, well, what's this for? Like, no one needed this.
That's the point with most of his changes, that when he cleans up an effect, I don't agree, because he sticks a load of shitty CG in it, but you go, well, like, okay, I see what he's trying to do. But there are things in this you go, well, like, come on. You're trained, you've trained in filmmaking. It's like last week. It's like, well, the Jabba scene doesn't need to go there because you've already exposited everything that's in that scene. He should know, but it's a guy who's got no objectivity. He's too close to his own material. I think that's entirely what it is.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And otherwise, that chase is real nail-biting, especially since from that you've got Vader and Luke almost talking to each other. So you've got Vader contacting Luke through the Force, and again where he says Luke and he says Father. So he's immediately kind of
accepted it, kind of.
Yeah, and then he says, Ben, why don't you tell me? So you see Luke is really kind of psychologically damaged from this, as well as being battered in himself.
But he knows. I remember the thing is when, there can always be a twist, in 3 years' time, you can retcon anything.
Yeah.
But given it's 1980, I remember James Earl Jones saying that the first time he saw that, he thought, no, he's lying.
Yeah.
But the film is telling us, no, he isn't.
Yeah.
The film leaves us in no doubt. It would take a retcon to undo that this film is telling us, yes, Vader is telling the truth here.
Absolutely. And again, you see Chewie getting really annoyed and just smashing the...
But the films, a lot of the films like that, I love it. It's not like the Star Trek reboots where they all run around screaming at each other. It's volume getting out of control from stress of a situation. And you've got a group of people who we subconsciously root for because they're no better than us, really. I mean, Luke is, because he's got the Force and all the rest of it, and we later find out Leia is, actually. But at this point, they're going into situations with a half-decent ship, but it's broken, and when it does work, they don't quite know what they're doing. And it's really, really effective. It's really handy for, like, character identification. Or identifying with a character.
And just that final chase sequence is so tense. So again, you've got the Millennium Falcon running from Star Destroyer and all these TIE fighters, and it's that bloody massive Star Destroyer as well. And it's kind of you kind of think Vader's in his hands, and then once again it's R2-D2 who saves the day.
R2 to the rescue.
Yeah, and again, you've got 3PO saying Chewbacca can do it, and saying why I'm standing here in pieces and you're having delusions of grandeur, and then he does it and he says, "R2, you did it."
See, it's basically a turncoat, isn't it? One minute he's like, "Oh, R2, you piece of shit," and then he's like, "Oh no, you're amazing, you've done it."
And then the amazing visual gag at the end, where you've got Vader, who's just looked out the window, seen the Millennium Falcon go to hyperspace. He turns, he looks back, almost in disbelief, and then he puts his hands behind his back and just walks off. And every single person looks back to see if someone's going to die, or if they're going to get it. And it's there's so many little moments in the film that don't necessarily get picked up, but it's just really, really funny, just lovely humour. And then an ending that is just, it's full of hope, but it's because they can't have an actual story climax, it's an emotional climax, but we're just left with that hope.
I also like how Vader like kind of calls to Luke as well, like kind of like almost like trying to beckons him almost, or like kind of a beckon / taunt. You know, it's kind of like so. Luke...
Never ever heard that as a taunt.
I don't know, because I think it's almost. I don't think like Vader is beckoning him, but it's almost kind of like from Luke's perspective, it's kind of like taunting him. It's like kind of torturing him a little bit. Because he's kind of like, oh, you're making me relive that thing, you know. I'm just kind of recovering from it, and now Vader's in my head again. You know, why didn't you tell me, Ben?
It's Vader again putting his plan into action. Because when he says we can destroy the Emperor, he has foreseen this. We can rule the galaxy as father and son. So again, he's putting that in his mind.
Yeah, and he has his hand replaced, and they look at the window.
Yes. And again, it's a lovely shot where, again, it's kind of in a pre-CGI era, when they're looking out the window, and then it cuts to the ship.
And they're all wearing like the type of clothes they were wearing in the first film as well, I noticed.
Well, it's like medical gown things, aren't they?
Yeah,
she's wearing a white dress, yeah. And he's got something that's very reminiscent of
New Hope.
Yeah, and the music here is amazing.
Is it the next film that
and
Lando and they basically swap outfits?
You see at the end of this one.
Yeah, the end of this one, basically they're wearing exact same clothes.
Yeah, he's wearing a vest and a
and
a shirt.
He's copying his look.
Yeah, he's basically like a Black Han.
but Lando's is a bit more suave.
Yeah, I think like Lando's got the style edge.
Yeah, he's got a big collar and he's got a bigger. He's got all his buttons done up, and whereas Han always looks a bit kind of
Lando Solo.
Yeah, and it's just the way you see the Millennium Falcon from that perspective. It's an amazing way to kind of have that. So you see the Falcon leaving, and there's a little kind of beep from Archer because. Like a really kind of sad kind of beep, and the music is just kind of swelling, and it's just such an amazingly emotional moment. And again, it's the first time we see the Rebel fleet as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because they've just been a ragtag of human beings.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that massive, really.
It's proper underdog story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, when you think, they had a Death Star in the last film that as soon as they got close to, they were dwarfed. You can actually see them within the whole fleet here. It's not that big. That's exactly the point.
Yeah, it's not until the next film where they kind of mass get everyone else, get help from other places, and the Mon Calamari and all that stuff, and where it really gets kind of to all size. But even that, not kind of a quarter of the Empire's. And
that, I think, is The Empire Strikes Back. Final thoughts, folks.
Okay, I'll go first. I like it. I don't love it. I wish I loved it as much as most fans do. And in a way, I'm kind of jealous because I wish I had it. I wish I did share that love. But for me, it has its moments when it drags. Some parts don't work for me, but where it matters, it does. So I understand why fans love it. I just can't. I like it.
I have to agree as well. I mean, I I do enjoy this film. There are aspects of it that I like, and aspects of it that I love. But just do like, and there are, as we've spoken throughout this review, there are a few moments of levity, but they're just not as often as I would like them to be. And the tone of this film is very dark for me. But that's not to say I still do like it. I really enjoyed it. I was pleased that it was chosen for the Secret Cinema rather than the episode 4. And that's it. Yeah, and I do like it. I do enjoy it. It's just not my favourite, and I wouldn't be able to align myself with the rest of the fans who do say this is the best Star Wars film. Yeah, I'm just kind of in the middle really.
The only flaw I can give this is a film that is somewhat aimed towards children. Not this particular chapter necessarily, but Star Wars in general. And the fact that I didn't appreciate this film until my late teens is actually something of a knock on it. It's the film that you're kind of bored with when you're a very young child. Now, there are exceptions to any rule, and a lot of people would disagree with that, but like kids prefer 1 or 3. But that said, I sit with it as an adult, and I'm not looking. I mean, I sat and talked to Chris recently about the summer releases, and we got onto Pixar, and I was talking about how the tone of films you go to see with the Pixar canon vary. That you go and see like Up and it appeals to everybody, or Toy Story. Then you go and see Wall-E and it doesn't appeal to very young children, which means that it can be the greatest film in the world and it's failed its target audience in some ways. That's not true here. The films are of a piece, but it's a film that rewards repeat viewing in a way nothing else in the series really does. I mean, they're all worth watching. You can keep watching them, no problem at all. But this is the one film you watch and you find extra layers in all the time. It is the best film in the series. Is it a great film? Possibly not. It's the greatest part of a great saga, though. And that's where I'll leave it. Charlie?
Yeah, it's definitely the best film in the series. I think it is a great film. I think there's just some things it does where I don't want to say elevate the material, because that perhaps does a disservice to the original Star Wars. But the kind of things that it does with Yoda and with the kind of the mythic stuff there, and what it does with Vader's character, and then the relationship with Luke, is just so great. And it's endlessly inventive and just wonderfully emotional. And I think it's so difficult to talk about this and Star Wars on a kind of competitive level because they're so different. Again, Star Wars is very much a fairy tale, whereas Empire is kind of going much more into kind of like deeper myth. And when you get to Return of the Jedi, it tries to balance the two and doesn't always work out as well. Everything in this film is just put together so well that I just have real trouble looking at any of it and kind of faulting it, really.
Is that a natural thing for trilogies? Is like, because typically the second one is usually darker, but is the third one usually like a mixture of of the two tones from the first two? Is that a common trait? Do you guys think?
I don't know.
I know some trilogies that don't fit that pattern. There's one that could spring to mind, definitely, but I don't know. That's a good question, actually.
I mean, I suppose it depends how. Again, because of the middle, because it's a middle
film.
Yeah, because it has that section, and so what the last film has to do is it has to provide a satisfactory conclusion, while dealing with all the fallout from that, but while kind of getting back to the original equilibrium, to steal one of the kind of classic Hollywood models, which is a part of the first film. It's like when you look at kind of like Lord of the Rings or something like that as well. It's kind of like the tone, because it's all supposed to be one thing and not a trilogy anyway. The tone is all kind of a bit more consistent anyway. but you can kind of, again, because you can still kind of see where it is, kind of having shades of the previous and mixing those in, because you have to have those things reconciled, really. So you have those different story strands, and getting back to the status quo.
I know. I guess also it also leads with the first film probably trying to find its feet, and then they kind of make a more decisive tone with the second one as well. So it was just a question that just hit me just then. So I just thought I'd ask it. But I'm needing some sort of fun and some sort of some kind of factage. Becca, have you got anything?
Yeah, I had to find 2 new fun facts. Charlie revealed a few of them.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, you didn't really. It's fine. Don't worry.
So you just have to quickly look on the IMDb trivia. And just
I was going to say
quickly.
it's not an extensive process.
No, some of the ones I actually know from my own knowledge, so I obviously don't know as much as Charlie, but there's a few bits I've gleaned across the years. Obviously, as we touched on earlier, fun fact number 1 about Mark Hamill's face, with the Wampa scene obviously being brought in as a way of explaining why he looks different. Obviously, he did suffer a car accident, but obviously this was a few years prior to the film being made, so he doesn't really have that many visible scars. So it wasn't due to a Wampa, but due to a car accident. Fun fact number 2, if you've seen that Leonardo DiCaprio film where he kills a horse, climbs inside it.
Sorry, that was my fault, wasn't it?
No, I think it's The Revenant, isn't it? Obviously, that is something done by native North Americans to keep warm in the harsh winter, and that was kind of worked into the film.
Right, well, that answers my question then.
And there's a line from the Family Guy Star Wars about how bad they smell. It's really funny. Fun fact number 3, Jim Henson personally recommended Frank Oz for the role of Yoda. Fun fact number 4, during the scenes on Hoth, the blizzard they suffered was real. And so, Mark Hamill was out there on his own while the rest of the film crew were inside a nice, warm, snug hotel going, ha. Fun fact number 5, I know this, obviously you can listen to this in the commentary as well. And this is on IMDb.com. In the DVD commentary, Carriage Fish relates that during the summer London filming, stayed in a house rented from Eric Idle. Idle and the Pythons were filming Life of Brian at this time. One evening, Idle had a small party, including Harrison Ford and the Rolling Stones. And so the potent liquor, to which Python was distributing to extras on their film to help boost morale, they're referred to as Tunisian table cleaner. They stayed up for most of the night drinking and having fun. The first scene shot the next day were the arrival at Cloud City, which he says helped explain why she and Harrison Ford were so happy in those scenes. It's because they were all crunk. I think that's great. That's fantastic. The reason they do seem very chipper is because they're really hungover.
Admiral Pierre, Kenneth Colley,
was
I
imagine
Jesus.
Yes.
In Life of Brian.
Exactly. I just think that's brilliant. You got just like the biggest collection of the biggest stars at the time, all in one place. I just think that's amazing. I think that's probably my favourite fun fact.
Okay, folks, we ought to sign off. This is starting to run long again.
Yeah.
Right. You can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Cinematronics on Twitter, where you can also find this podcast at cinematronics.co.uk.
You can find me at Movie Drone on Twitter.
And you can find us at Expect Us to Talk on Twitter or Facebook.com/Expect Us to Talk. You can also find us on YouTube. You have to type in, do you expect us to talk? And we're also the same on iTunes. Don't forget to give us a glowing 5-star review. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anyway.
So we've got a trilogy to finish, Becca, which means...
Do You Expect Us to Talk will return with Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi.